to the Inner Podcast, where you can embrace your inner nerd. I'm your host, Brandon.
And I'm your host, Aaron.
See, we got through the intro.
Nice job.
Are we done?
No.
Oh, shit.
No, Brandon, we are not done.
Okay.
So, Brandon, what are we talking about today?
Oh, I don't fucking know.
Okay, well, let me get you started off.
Okay.
So, we talked about doing vampire-related stuff.
How are you, Aaron?
2 episodes in a row. When I'm just kind of like doing my thing and you're like, Aaron, not yet. And I'm like, Brandon, let me get there. Uno momento, sir.
Why isn't it like a intro and then, hey, how are you? Then we do small talk and then we get into
Brandon,
it.
You know what? We're just figuring stuff out. But until then, don't interrupt.
I dropped my mic. Oh, wait. I could clip it.
Brandon,
It's got a clip on it.
how are you?
It's been a day.
It's been a day.
Yeah, it's been a really long day. I almost got hit by a train.
A what?
Not like a train, but like, you know, those trains that they use for like college students to like,
Like a light rail?
yeah.
How? Like that? Those aren't tracks that you can like just casually cross over.
No, I know, but so for work, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but some customers pay with cash, and when they pay with cash, I have to go get a money order.
Okay.
And when I have to get a money order, I have to drive 7 minutes down the street to this place where they turn the cash into a check, essentially.
Okay.
And it's not like a difficult trip, nor is it a difficult task. But I had to go get a money order, and then I came back from getting said money order, realizing that I forgot some of the money that I was supposed to put into the money order.
Right.
So then I had to make a second trip, and I was already like beating myself up about this because, again, this is like a new job. This is only like my, second week?
Something like that, yeah.
So I just like, all the small mistakes, even though my boss didn't care, I was beating myself up about it. So on my way back to the cash place, again, I was really in my head and I wasn't paying attention, and I thought I could beat a light, but I couldn't. And when I stopped, I didn't realize where I stopped. That was on this wide-ass train track. So I decided, I'm going to back up. And, like, I will say, it was partially my fault because I wasn't really, like, focused.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of your fault.
But I started backing up, and the douchebag behind me wouldn't back up. He had a room.
Right.
And he didn't. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, well, let's just hope that a light rail doesn't come by. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, look at that! And so I made just a split-second decision, and I fucking slammed on the gas pedal and made like an immediate right. Almost got smacked by the little thing that comes down, the little guard rail thingy.
Oh, boy.
And then after that, my day just like progressively got worse. It wasn't great before then, but it just kept going downhill from there. But
Sorry to hear that.
that's okay. And now all I have is to come home to is this IPA, which for those of you who like IPAs, it's fucking nasty. And I only have it because it was free.
Well, hopefully this conversation will make up, I don't know, something out of your day.
We'll see. You not asking how my day was when the episode first started didn't help.
Oh my lord. Okay, well try this on for size. So, are you aware that the Xbox Developers Direct conference happened today? Or not conference, but panel or whatever?
No. I honestly, I don't really have much free time to like look at my phone or anything.
Okay,
Work.
So to sum up, essentially Xbox all of the developers under their umbrella.
Okay.
They gave them an opportunity to showcase like trailers to things that they were working on. So there was the trailer to Doom,
Yeah.
The Dark Ages, as you're aware.
Yes.
There was a trailer to South by Midnight, something like that. That's the one where it's like the girl in like the South.
Like in the Bayou. Type.
Yeah, and it's like the dropped frame rate aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know, it's very stylized.
Kind of like claymation type.
I would say it's more keen to like Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Like it's just 3D animated, but they
It's
dropped the
just the way
frame
how
rate.
they're modeled. It kind of gives off like a clay. Well, not like necessarily a clay, but they kind of look like models instead of.
Well, they
like,
definitely look more 3D
Yeah.
than like Into the Spider-Verse. But before I get to the third game they announced, which was very interesting. First, I want to talk about Doom really quick because you're a big Doom fan.
That's an understatement.
You're a gigantic, you're one of those globetrotter fans of Doom and
Yes.
the Doom franchise. The same way that I am with Dead Space or Halo, Metal Gear, so on and so forth.
Right.
But first off, the trailer, I jokingly but partially seriously in a conversation some time ago was like, what if there's a twist that the Dark Ages actually is in the future and it's not in the past? And you were like, Aaron, that's stupid. It takes place blah, blah. And I'm like, I know, I get it. But if you saw this trailer, you would think the same thing. It looks ridiculously futuristic.
Well,
Like most of it.
well, yeah.
No, most of it looks like mech fighting.
Right.
Like there's the giant mech, there's the
right.
flying creature thing that he rides on that
Right.
like can fly at light speeds, and
Yeah.
there's the giant spaceship in space, and
Yes.
I don't know anything about Doom,
Well, I do.
but a part of me really thinks, especially because they're kind of hiding his face again in a way.
yeah.
No, like it's in the last game they showed his face.
Only in the expansion.
Right, but in this game, like you can kind of see a face through the visor, and his like eyes are glowing white and stuff. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. He looks different.
Well, it could be because he just became.
I don't know, Brandon.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that I'm anticipating, not that I don't think I'll play Doom. I might play Doom. I'm not sure. But I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a huge twist, whether one, it's not the same Doomslayer, or two, I'm right and that it's actually in the future. And the Dark Ages refers to as something went wrong and they have to call him back again in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, when I was telling you that the game takes place in the past,
Right.
I don't mean like. So, this is what a lot of people get wrong. Because I've heard some really dumb people who claim they're like nerds and they make comments about Doom.
Okay.
It does not take place in medieval time.
Clearly.
Right. But a lot of people are like, oh, it's him in like medieval time or him in Viking time.
Well,
No.
there's definitely like a medieval aesthetic they're going for.
So it takes place after the original Doom games,
Right.
which is really, really far into the future.
Right.
Right, so that's why it's futuristic. And another reason why it's really futuristic and why they have mechs is because that belongs to the Night Sentinels, whose technology is beyond our comprehension. And they've always had mechs, and they've had creatures, and they've had these weird weapons, and so on and so forth. And Yeah, so it's going to be pretty futuristic already. But another thing is there's a lot of demons who are like downgraded because it takes place in the past. And if you and the people listening know the ending of Doom Eternal, the expansion, the ancient ones, so spoiler alert, he wins. And all the demons disappear. They go bye-bye. They die. No more. No more demons. And the Doomslayer gets put back into his... I hear that too. For those of you listening, we hope you guys can't hear this, but there's a weird noise outside. We really don't know what it is. I'm going to press this button right here.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, but yeah, so there are no more demons. And if there are any, then they're stuck in hell and there's no getting out. And he gets put in his eternal slumber until he's needed again. But this game is supposed to show how he goes from a mortal man to an almost unkillable godlike warrior.
Gotcha.
So there could have just been like design choices that technically don't like add up with timeline stuff, like maybe the white eyes. I haven't seen the trailer yet, but maybe the white eyes is an indicator that he just transformed.
Well, no, that's what he looks like throughout the game.
Okay, but what I'm saying is for when this takes place,
okay,
it's an indicator that he just transformed, like in the beginning of the game and like throughout the rest of the game. He has white eyes, but then they like disappear later on in like Doom 2016 and Eternal Time.
Yeah, but that's lame.
It is
the white
lame.
eyes look cool.
It does, but I don't know, because I don't know their choice. And the Dark Ages is referring to the era when hell, or when the Dark One, when he was betrayed and he unleashed his forces up upon the Night Sentinels, creating the whole war. Like it's kind of like when you say like World War II, it's like a title for a specific war. The Dark Ages was a specific war that happened.
Okay.
So that's why it's called the Dark Ages.
Gotcha. So
as much as it's not like a bad thing for you to have a theory, and there is a 0.005% chance I'm wrong, but that still means that there's a very tiny itty bitty hairline fracture chance that you are right.
A part of me does kind of wish they did go into the medieval times. Like, what would the universe of Doom be like? It kind of makes me think...
just wouldn't line up with the Doomslayer. It would have to be someone else, and it would have to be like a completely
That's
different...
fine.
I mean, yeah, you're right. It is fun. But
there's been multiple protagonists throughout the Doom franchise, so it's like, it's fine that...
Well, there's only been 2.
No, there has not been. No, I just watched an IGN video like the other day saying that there's like 9 different, throughout different like expansions and spin-offs and books and...
yeah.
Well, but I mean, like, there's like in-game assets of like other like protagonists and stuff. Especially Doom 3, you play as multiple characters.
Okay, well, I'm thinking about continuity.
Okay, but regardless, it doesn't matter if there's a different protagonist or not. I still think there's a lot of franchises. There's a lot of franchises where I'm just, whether it's the developers themselves or the IP itself, that I think they need to like just explore a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I would say the gameplay would be very different too, because there's just things a normal person couldn't do.
But that'd be kind of cool. Like, you can make it more... You could maybe lean into a little bit more of like traversal a little bit. Mm-hmm. So he'd have to like scope walls a specific way to like storm castles and...
Could you imagine a game that had like the gameplay of Last of Us, but in the universe of Doom?
That would be weird.
And you kind of like have certain missions where like instead of encountering clickers or runners.
I feel like that'd be really slow for how chaotic and fast paced the Doom universe is.
Yeah, but if you're playing as like a survivor or just like someone who's like kind of just dealing with the same shit.
Yeah, but I think the point of the Doom universe is that that's the type of scenario to explore that fantasy.
Or you could have like a Call of Duty gameplay or like slash Battlefield type gameplay and you're playing as like an actual Marine.
I guess, but
Oh, but if you're talking about medieval time, then
yeah,
but yeah, it would just be.
but I do want to say that on another note, back to just like the developers direct thing. The South of Midnight game actually looks really interesting.
It's kind of bringing back like traditional hack and slash.
Well, not only just that, but something about like the traversal, very in depth story that the trailer kind of reveals, and just something that's, I feel like Space Marine was like a prime example, and this game, depending on how well it does or how good it is, could be like proof of concept of games just going back to just being a game.
Yeah.
Similar to like Indiana Jones. It's like it's just a story. It's just the game as it is, and that's it.
It's kind of like what we were talking about when the new Warhammer game came out. How like the campaign and even just the gameplay itself was just very traditional to like some of the games that we grew up with.
Right.
Which is kind of nice. Like I like how things are going backwards.
Yeah, and that I honestly think you should look forward to that game to potentially play it on your channel.
Maybe I've been asked to play more horror games, so that's kind of what I'm focusing towards.
Maybe, yeah, I'd say maybe before then. I think it comes out in April.
Oh yeah.
So you have time. But I just think that might be a game because it does look like it's action, but it could be a little bit more laid back.
Yeah.
Because it's more focused on narrative. So maybe if you did want to play a game that's a little slower compared to like horror and other stuff.
I'm also thinking about choosing a select few games to live stream and then like reposting.
That'd be interesting. I mean, I think that would be a great game, if not a horror game, to do because you could kind of play it at your own pace.
Not only that, but I was also going to do games like Spider-Man, like maybe games that like I started but I haven't finished, like Spider-Man. Not Alan Wake, but
right.
Things where I can kind of like, I'm more comfortable taking my eye off the screen a little bit more.
Right.
But yeah, that game could be.
And then there was a third big game that they announced.
Uh-oh.
Ninja Gaiden 4.
Really?
Meaning it's a direct follow-up to the Ninja Gaiden 3 that you and I used to play all the time.
But now I'm curious though. Wait, first off, who's the main character?
So that's another twist. So it is Ryo Hayabusa.
Oh god.
And a new character.
Oh.
It's a dual protagonist story, so you go back and forth between
Kinda
Ryo
like
and
Syndicate.
Yeah, I think it's more. It's not like open world or anything and so it's more like just different missions will switch you back and forth between people.
Okay, so more like Devil May Cry 5.
Yeah, but the new character is like I didn't get all the details, but he's like a rival ninja because based on the trailer, they meet in the game, and there's a point when they like duel, but he's got like a new fighting style. So he is a ninja, but he plays it a little differently, where he has like these one swing finishers that Ryo doesn't have because Ryo plays more of like the traditional like hack and slash ninja like from the prior games, obviously with new stuff. Um, but another weird twist is that it's like more futuristic. So it follows up the last game, but when you look at it, it's almost borderline like gothic cyberpunk.
Well, that would make sense because not of Ninja Gaiden 3 or Gaiden. I say Gaiden,
Yeah.
but the game that takes place after Ninja Gaiden 3.
Yeah,
The cyborg
but
one.
that one was just so because that one was like zombies and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I never finished the game because that game's atrocious.
Yeah, but I could be wrong, but I think that game was supposed to just be like an offshoot thing.
Oh.
It could be part of the main continuity.
I would have to see what the ending of the game is because if the zombie thing was like temporary, then it could make sense why.
Yeah, maybe, but just aesthetically, they're definitely. I mean, not aesthetically, but they're definitely going back to like the previous generation of Ninja Gaiden that you and I are familiar with.
Right.
Because Rio even looks the same. Actually, sort of. He's definitely like the same concept, but from like the neck down, he's got more armor on him,
Oh, okay.
like kind of futuristic armor, sort of. It looks interesting. I mean, for anyone who's a fan of that generation of Ninja Gaiden, like might actually like this.
I mean, it's also kind of suiting towards the story because like the original Ninja Gaiden games were very like home to like traditional like ninja and like shinobi type stuff. And then Ninja Gaiden 3 was very like modern and military and what have you. And so like them kind of like jumping through time as far as like
Well, the thing is that's why I was saying that there's kind of like different generations because the Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3, that was kind of our generation. And Rio Hayabusa had that look where he wore all black with like the silver mask and stuff like that.
yeah.
That's like what this one's following.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, kind of, I guess, kind of what you were talking about. I want to say it's not the Sega Genesis. It was after that. One of the Sega systems had a version of Ninja Gaiden where it was more, I guess you could call it more grounded in a way. But and then prior to that, it was very like arcade, like a ninja in the streets kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, but there's a new Ninja Gaiden game coming out.
I'm very curious.
I would recommend watching the trailer when you get the chance. It looks
Probably right after this.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting looking. I might give it a try. All of these games, because it's an Xbox showcase, they're all going to be Game Pass day one,
Oh, nice.
including Ninja Gaiden. So,
Did
yeah.
they give a release date for Doom yet?
Yes, it's May
Ooh.
something. I think it was like May 15th,
Sweet.
something like that. Yeah.
Great. As long as shit doesn't come out around Henry's birthday, that's all I care about.
Nope. Yeah. I think Ninja Gaiden had a release date too, but I wasn't paying attention.
So in awe of the game that you forgot to look at the release date.
I don't know about awe. I was more shocked.
Oh.
It's just like I'm not only am I surprised that there's a new Ninja Gaiden game coming out, but that they're following this version of Ninja Gaiden. I thought that version was just gone with, and like
Especially after the recent game, like because they made what's his name?
Rio.
Yeah, they made him like the bad guy in that game.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I just assumed like because of how long it had been, and because of how dated those games kind of are now, that it was just kind of something that maybe they would consider rather rebooting or like reimagining.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe if they did bring the franchise back, they would just do it like a new console, new generation way. I don't know. But no, it's just following up that specific series. And yeah, and then speaking of games in another aspect, I can't think if we talked about it on the podcast. I know I've brought it up for sure. That game that we had mentioned before, from previous developers of The Witcher, Blood of the Dawnwalker.
Mm-hmm.
So I did look up some new information on that because I know I did tell you some stuff. I think that might have been just between us. But I did think it was interesting. You play as a character named Cohen, a young man turned into a Dawnwalker, forever treading the line between the world of day and the realm of night. Combine vampiric strength with human resolve. Use your skills and combine vampiric strength with human resolve. Face your foes, be they human, monster, or ticking clock itself. But remember, the real evil may bask in the sun's light, and the most loyal of allies could lurk under the cover of the night. So, and I think I did describe it to you, but from what they have talked about so far, there's talks of the whatchamacallit. So essentially it gives you, not in real time, I think, in the game you're given 30 days.
Right.
Or what I'm assuming are like 30 cycles, similar to like the Gotham Knights game.
Yeah.
But so you're given only 30 days or cycles to complete not only the main story missions, but whatever side missions are available to you.
Yeah.
And as the days pass, some of those go away.
Yeah, we talked about this on the first episode.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was on the actual episode itself or if that was just between us.
No.
But I just thought that was really cool. I'm excited to play a vampire game that's
Works in real time.
well, see, that's the thing. I don't know if it is in real time. I don't know if it's
30 days already kind of makes it in real time. The whole 30 days limit thing.
Well, that's the thing, because I don't know if you can initiate the next day or not. Like in Gotham Knights, is what I'm saying. In real time implies that like the days are passing along with your days.
Well, right, but 30 days is a long time to get certain things done. So if it worked in real time, it would make sense so that people actually had time to do the things.
But that's
that
the
they
point.
initiated.
You're not supposed to be able to finish everything. The
Well,
developer
not everything, but
the developer said it's impossible to complete everything in one playthrough.
as soon as you say something's impossible, there's going to be some kind of player who deems otherwise.
I'm sure they're building the game to be that way, because as the days, the cycles pass on throughout the game, some story quests will just not become available anymore.
There's going to be one person who sleep deprives themselves for an entire month just so that...
Brandon, it's not 30 days in our time. It's 30 days in the game.
Someone's going to do that just to ensure the fact that they can accomplish as much of the game as humanly possible.
There's no game that's a month long. It doesn't work like that.
That's including side stuff, Aaron.
I know, but it's just... It's the whoever stakes it out, like you're saying, they're not going to be able to do it. They're building the game so it's impossible to complete everything.
I believe in you, unnamed gamer.
It also makes it so that you go back and you replay it and play the stuff you didn't play the first time through. And then also those could be different depending on if it's day or night, which makes it that much more interesting.
You might not believe in him or her, but I do.
There's no belief. It's just fact.
You might not believe in it.
Ow. But I think it'll be an interesting game. It's one of the few that are on my radar, including the Exodus game, and there was another game. Oh, the new it was like an old stealth game years ago, and they're making a new one. They showed it on the Xbox showcase last year.
What?
Yeah, you know the girl who she's on the cover and she has like red hair.
Oh, Perfect Dark.
Yeah, they're making a new one.
Yeah, but I think that's still a ways out.
It still looks sick.
I'm talking about 2025's radar.
Oh. Oh, what's that one where it's kind of like a 4v4 thing, but like you use playing cards and it changes the environment?
Oh, that one.
That looks sick.
I don't remember what that one was called, but I remember when we were watching that showcase, we were really excited about that.
That looks cool.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was looking more forward to games that aren't online
Well, yeah, me too.
or co-op. I really just want another single player game
Yeah.
that's not open world. I'm starting to really get sick of open world. The only reason I'm making an exception for Exodus and the Blood of the Dawnwalker is because Exodus is made by like the original people who made Mass Effect,
Mm-hmm.
like some original team members from BioWare, and I kind of just want like a new Mass Effect-ish experience.
Yeah.
So if there is any chance that it's like a spiritual successor to Mass Effect, I want in.
Yeah.
Or at least I want to give it a shot. And then Blood of the Dawnwalker, it's like doing something new.
Yeah.
These are the guys with like the ideas that I'm interested in.
Right.
You know, we see a lot of just copy and paste open world stuff. And, you know, I'd be willing to put in the time for something that's different.
Yeah.
And plus it's a vampire.
Yeah.
You're like, that's sick as fuck.
That is.
Oh, I did. I don't see. There's been kind of like a tight lip about it, but there's been quite a few people that have had a chance to play Assassin's Creed Shadows,
Oh.
and they weren't allowed to talk about it. Some have like slipped and said that like they played it,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them are like, "Oh, well, we can say we've played it, but we can't say anything about it."
Yeah.
But one of the ones that slipped, I'm not gonna like out them. Not that we have a big audience or anything, but I'm just not gonna out them.
Yeah.
They said it's not that bad. They were like really surprised with, how well it played and how clean the game looked, and they were the way that maybe they were just being really optimistic about it, but they said that like the constant pushbacks look like it's paying off and we might be getting another quality Assassin's Creed game. What I also think is interesting on the note of Assassin's Creed Shadows is that a new trailer dropped, like a story trailer dropped today. And just from what I saw, it looks, they're definitely using like in-game engine cutscenes again,
Okay.
but they don't look as robotic
That's great.
as the previous like RPG style Assassin's Creed games. Like they actually were like
fucking Assassin's Creed Mirage.
yeah, like they were actually better. They were like
No, I'm saying like Assassin's Creed Mirage was robotic.
well, yeah, but I just mean all of those previous games.
Right.
But this one, like they're actual cutscenes.
Wow.
They are in-game engine, so like it'll look like it's not as cinematic as the more detailed cutscenes that are like in Valhalla, or you know how like in Valhalla or Odyssey, like every now and then you'd get a cutscene that's like a real cutscene,
Yeah.
and it just looked a little better, and like the performance capture and stuff was better. It's like that.
Yeah. Well, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, But like looking back at like the quality of the cutscenes in all Assassin's Creed games right before Odyssey and Valhalla, aren't they all in engine? They're just like actually performed?
Well, yeah,
Because like Assassin's Creed Origins, for example, I believe that
those cutscenes were those
that
were all performed.
but it was still in engine.
Yeah,
So maybe
but they also
that's
didn't have like the RPG aspect where like you were like picking dialogue trees and stuff like that.
well, right, but like I don't care about that thing. Like I want old school Assassin's
But
Creed.
yes, in to put it bluntly, yes, like it is in game engine, but just from what it looked like, there's like actual cutscenes and there's actual like performance behind the characters and stuff,
Sweet.
which looks interesting. And I have more hope for it.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be. The only problem is though, is that even if it does really well, for whatever reason, like it just like puts Assassin's Creed back on the map for whatever reason. Not to say that this game will. There's been a lot of talks about Ubisoft being bought out
Oh.
and like their franchises being sold. And I forgot what the company's called that the discussions are with. But if that ends up happening, like who knows what's the future of any of these franchises?
Yeah.
So like what happens if like this game like ends up being amazing and then Ubisoft goes through with like selling their business or whatever to this other company and then like it was all for nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
How-
what happens to the Splinter Cell remake and stuff like that.
Right. How I see it is like taking Assassin's Creed, for example, it can go down 3 different routes. It could be one, they get sold off to someone who really understands what people actually want from Assassin's Creed
Right.
and makes a better Assassin's Creed game moving forward, which would be sick and ideal. There's the second route, which is the more unfortunate route where someone else takes on the rights of Assassin's Creed and it keeps going further and further downhill. Or the third option is that no one plans on making any more Assassin's Creed games. So the best thing to do is just do the biggest send-off and make one last Assassin's Creed game that like you put your heart, soul, and wallet into, and you just get like the most amazing Assassin's Creed game of all time. And the story itself would like end off too, to where there could not be any more Assassin's Creed games.
I don't know. I don't like that would be a great way to look at it, but the reality is just that I don't think going forward, I think very soon, I don't know when it'll be, but I think very soon, Ubisoft's just gonna, they're rather gonna like be sold out or like bought out or whatever, or they're just not gonna be anymore.
Like they're just gonna fade away.
I think so because like even though the Prince of Persia game that came out recently was actually well received and it got awards and stuff like that, that studio shut down. Like they disbanded and everything right after the release of the game.
Damn.
So it's like if that's sure maybe it was like a money thing, but like if that can happen to a game that like is well received or relatively well received, then like who's to say what happens with anything else from Ubisoft going forward?
Right.
Because also Ubisoft's just not the company it used to be.
Right.
It doesn't make the same type of games, or even it doesn't even seem to acknowledge the type of games that they used to make.
Yeah.
Far Cry is not what it used to be. Assassin's Creed's not what it used to be. It's just all different now. So I don't know.
Splinter Cell, I don't think would be just knowing what Ubisoft likes to do. Splinter Cell would never, ever, ever be what it used to be.
I mean, from all the talks and all of the like interviews and the things that they released on the remake of Splinter Cell, it looked like that there was a team that was really passionate about it. But that was also like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like with all of this talk about Ubisoft now, like what happens now?
Right.
So I don't know. I didn't mean to bring up Assassin's Creed because that kind of deviated us from the conversation of today. The Blood of the Dawn Walker was supposed to be my segue from video games, but there is something that's feels very different from what we've just been talking about, but was the main goal of today's episode, and that is 2024's NOSFERATU.
Yes.
Directed by Robert Eggers.
Yes.
Starring Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Willem Dafoe. And then obviously Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah, I was about to say he's like
as Count Orlok. But before we actually talk about NOSFERATU 2024, you, Brandon,
yes.
got the chance to finally watch the original one.
Yes.
So tell me about your experience, Brandon, with the original one.
So I took down some quick notes. Some of them aren't, well, realistically, none of these notes are really important. They're just things that I noticed and I jotted down. So whether or not they're actually worth talking about is hearsay. But yes, I just watched the original NOSFERATU because I wanted to see how similar and how different the two versions are. And I know there's one NOSFERATU in 1978,
Something like that, yeah, in the mid 70s.
but from what you've told me about it, it's essentially just the original one, but there is like it's not a silent film, and it's kind of just a weirder version of the original.
Yeah, to sum it up, and what's also really weird is that it is and it isn't NOSFERATU. It's called NOSFERATU the Vampire or Vampire or however you, because it's the one with the Y.
Right.
But it's actually Dracula. Like he's called Dracula in the movie.
That doesn't make any sense.
And Knock is called Renfield, but the main character is still Thomas Hutter, from what I remember, and it's and I could be wrong, but I think Ellen's name is different too. It's not the Mina from
Dracula
either.
So it's just
That I might be remembering wrong, but it is the story. It's told the same way that NOSFERATU is. Like he looks like Count Orlok. He looks.
But overall, it's not worth the conversation that we're having today.
If you really wanted to go in depth, I would say it's something noteworthy, but I would say it's more comparative to Dracula because they try to lean more into the story of Dracula.
But yeah, I mean, one, I haven't seen the movie. I don't care to see the movie. And
yeah, the original one is more important.
Right. So I'm kind of just going to start from the beginning.
Okay.
So I kind of said this already, but I was surprised on how similar and different the movies are, but they're similar in very small details that carried over, but different in very noticeable changes, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So like the amount of things that are similar about the movies are things that you really just have to like pinpoint and like focus on, while the things that are different are the things that are like shoved in your face and they're the first things that you see when it comes on screen.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
I think so.
Okay, I really don't care. But well, I have examples. So like for example, the things that everyone wore, for example, aside from it being like the same time period, like they tried to match the same era.
Yeah.
But things like the coat and the hat Hutter wore when he went on his adventure to Transylvania.
Okay.
So like that was the same. And like how certain characters had like their hair done and whatnot. Like his friend, the rich guy. By the way,
Yeah.
we didn't say this, but
Friedrich Harding.
for those of you who haven't watched the movie, we're definitely going to get into spoilers.
I think we'll talk about, because let's talk about the original one first.
Okay, well, I'm just
Because
saying,
I kind of want to say when we'll get into like actual spoilers.
Well, this is definitely spoilers for the original movie then.
Yeah, and I will note that there are enough similarities between the two to where some of what we talk about from the original movie leaks into the new one.
Right.
But there are some notable differences that I would like to save as a spoiler.
Well, yeah. So, but like some of the bigger changes were things like, well, and there are also things that I noted down later on too, but things like how excited Hutter was when he got the news about leaving.
Yeah.
So like in the original movie, he's like, I'm so excited. I get to go on this like grand adventure and I get to go to Transylvania and it'll be great.
Right.
While in the new movie, he's kind of worried. Like it's a long trip. He wasn't really prepared for this as a realtor.
And it's like super last minute.
And
he's a new hire.
And he can't really afford it.
Well, but that's also why he goes.
Well, right. But like, and they kind of mentioned that in the original one, but it's also how he pitched it too. And I wrote it down here. Yeah, so I wrote, Thomas seems more excited and less worried than in the new movie. But when he goes to his bride, her name was Ellen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he goes to Ellen, the very first thing he says to her is, darling, I'm going to the land of thieves and specters.
Mm-hmm.
Who says that?
Well, that's just like, that's kind of like the, first off, it's translation because it was a German.
Okay, I
film,
get that.
But it's very, when they made movies of the time, it's kind of like the difference between like how Western audience like creators tell stories compared to like Eastern countries.
I know.
You know? But it's like of that time, they were much more, with expressionist films, they were much more romantic and they were like, I don't know what, I guess the word expressionist would be the case. So that's why he was much more lively and animated.
I should have made this disclaimer before I started these notes.
Okay.
I understand this was made in the 1920s.
Right.
It's a completely different era and it's a different way of approaching movies. I get it. But looking at it from someone who exists now and just knowing some of the things you don't say to your wife who's already worried and paranoid.
Right.
Oh, by the way, before this incident, I'm just going to say she did something that was kind of rude. So in the very beginning of the movie, it literally starts off with Hutter getting flowers for Ellen. Mm-hmm. And he gives them to her. And instead of saying, oh, thank you, you're so sweet, this is such a nice gesture.
She says, why would you kill these?
Yeah, she's like, why would you murder these flowers? Like, you asshole. Like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, I did this nice thing for you. No, I get it. It's a different time.
Well, no, that's not of the time. That's the different thing. That's her character.
Okay, well, her character's stupid. And should say that on her own time. She should have said thank you first. Or she could have been like, I appreciate the gesture, but I would have preferred you left them alone or something like that.
But the thing is, and I just kind of want to throw this out there, it's much more apparent in the new movie, maybe to a much different degree, but Ellen's also the kind of character where like she's so loving and she's so appreciative of having Thomas in both versions, at like in the time of their life that they're at, that she doesn't want materialistic things, and she doesn't
Right.
she doesn't expect gestures, and but also her being kind of like the very tender-hearted person that she is, like when he in her eyes kills these plants to make a gesture, it's like too much for her.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I again, it's a different time, but I found it hilarious that the first thing he said to his wife when he's giving her this pitch of this trip he has to go on, because again,
Yeah,
she's already worried,
right.
and he's like, "Babe, I'm going to this land, and guess what? It's littered with thieves, specters, but don't be worried because we'll make some money."
Yeah.
Asshole. And also, this, I didn't note this, but I definitely want to say it. And I might be a dick for saying this, because
Okay.
again, it's a different time and what have you. Who played Ellen?
I don't know her name. Why?
So it is a her.
Oh boy. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It doesn't. There's so many times in that movie where I was convinced it was a dude in a wig.
No, Brandon, it was not a dude in a wig.
Rough. All right. Well, anyways, moving past that. Okay, but here's another note that goes with the noticeable changes. The town he stops at before meeting Count Orlok
Okay.
in both movies are very different.
Yeah.
In this movie, he goes to this place that's very welcoming and like cheerful, and they're all like, "Hey, have a beer."
Right.
And then they find out why he's there, and they're like, "Oh, that's not a good idea."
Yeah.
But they don't say it's not a good idea because of Count Orlok. It's not a good idea because there's a werewolf.
Yeah.
They do. And then right after they mention the so-called werewolf, a clip of a hyena comes into frame.
No, you're right.
So, like, obviously, I understand that there was probably difficulties getting their hand on footage of a wolf. But realistically, for people who may be educated on wild animals, hyenas aren't any fucking better. How did they get a clip of a hyena, somehow pitch it as a werewolf, and get away with that?
This is just speculation. There is a good chance that they did it on purpose to express that these people were
Idiots.
like they could have easily just been delusional in Thomas's eyes, because what they say in a sense is true, that there's like an evil past a certain point, but to be like, oh, it's a werewolf, which is wrong, and then to show a hyena, which is also wrong, just as to maybe that's like to Hutter, oh, these people don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
That's just speculation. That seems a little overwritten for a 1920s movie.
Yeah.
But at least maybe that's just how I see it.
Yeah.
I feel like it reads better that way.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And it could easily be the case. Who knows? I just found that kind of funny, but also random, especially like because the new movie, the way they do it is he encounters this
Gypsies.
Right, gypsies. And they're all weird as shit. But they make it very clear, well, one, don't go any further. But it's not because of a hyena/werewolf. It's because of Count Orlok.
Well, it's more specifically just vampires.
Well, right. They don't say Count Orlok, but they mention like a vampire and stuff like that. So it was a very strange switch. Like, I understand why they made the change because it makes more sense in the new movie the way they did it.
Right.
And then this one's not really important at all, but there's a quick scene when they show a view of these like snowy mountains.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was actually like scenery of Transylvania or not.
You're saying in the original movie?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Oh, well. Bummer. Oh, yeah, and then this again. So a couple of these are not important at all. They're just things that I noticed that happened, and I just wanted to jot it down.
Okay.
He finds a book in his little study.
Right.
That when he's in the little village thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the book tells him about vampires, and I believe it even mentions Count Orlok or something like that. It says NOSFERATU.
It says the word NOSFERATU.
And he laughs and slams the book down onto the ground like a football.
Right.
And then proceeds to go to bed.
Yeah.
First off, this is not your place. You come in, you're given a place to stay, a nice cozy bed that doesn't look like it's made properly and may fall. But you find a book, again, does not belong to you, and you decide, this is hilarious. I'm going to throw this book on the ground. Now, if I did that to my mom's book, I'd get slapped. That's a joke. But you know what I mean? Like, that's fucking rude. That, again, has no importance to the story.
Right.
I just thought that was fucking insane. Because I would kill him. So then it gets to the time when he leaves the village and he gets picked up by the chariot. Like the carriage and the horses. And
Right.
Count Orlok is the rider.
Yeah. He's the guy operating the carriage.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not crazy, but it was just something, again, it was just something I was like, you know that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio in that Hollywood movie where he like snaps and points at the TV? That was me with that scene. I was like, hey, it's him.
It's definitely different too. I've done extensive research on the original movie.
Yeah.
And I followed the new movie heavily because I'm a huge Robert Eggers fan.
Right.
But one thing that a lot of the research doesn't talk about is that scene, because the biggest comparison, just right off the bat, is that in Dracula, the person operating the carriage is like vaguely described as like a dark Reaper-esque figure.
Right.
Not like the Grim Reaper specifically, but like a character that's like donned in black and is like an apparition almost. So it's like a faceless kind of driver. But yeah, and then in this one, it's Orlok himself.
Yeah. Who's
like pretending to be a carriage driver.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, you're fine. So he finally gets to the castle. He meets Count Orlok, and they're taken to the table where they'll like conduct business. For the first like 2.5 days, he's there because he stays there for like 3 or 4 days or something like that.
Yeah.
The first half in the original movie, he's well taken care of. He gets this like grand old meal.
Right.
He's loving the place. And again, like difference in like storytelling, but he's also like oblivious. Like after he spends the night, has like a belly full of food and what have you. He wakes up and he's like stretching and he's all cheerful and he skips outside like a little girl and he goes up to this little railing thing and he writes a letter to Ellen.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but it's so funny. The mosquitoes have already gotten me. I have 2 bites on my throat.
Yeah.
But it's no big deal. La-di-di-di-di.
Yeah. Like he's just absurdly oblivious.
But in the new movie, from the get-go, as soon as he gets there, he's uncomfortable.
Right.
He's not taking... Yeah, he was given a drink. I don't... Oh, I mean,
there was a meal set up for him.
Yeah, but it wasn't the same. He
Right.
hated every fucking moment of it.
Right. And it's... Yeah, we'll get into that.
Right. But, so, and like, This is definitely getting more in depth with the storytelling of both versions of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the original movie, Count Orlok wasn't aware of Ellen before meeting.
Yes.
Like he sees the picture of her, and then he's like, "Oh my God, your wife has a lovely neck."
Right.
And then that's when the obsession starts.
That's something, though, kind of part of the spoilers.
Right.
That we'll get into like the heavy details of the new movie, but let's run through like your notes of the original movie.
Well, so yeah, I'll circle back into that one. But
because a lot of the new details have to do with not only similarities and the changes that he made, but they have a lot to do with like the more impactful narrative stuff he changed.
So I did write a couple notes
Okay.
that aren't necessarily about the scene or the movie itself. It was kind of like me daydreaming about a specific scene and how I would do it if I had like the money, the resources, and if I was making my own version of said scene or whatever.
Okay, and what's that?
Well, I have two, and the other one will be later on down the line. But the first one was he's reading this book or note next to his bed in Count Orlok's castle.
Right.
This is very similar to the one that he read in the village. But it talks about how you can't like take your eyes off of him because he'll stalk in your shadow. And once he's able to, there's like almost no getting away. They had a different way of wording it, but that was essentially the gist.
Right.
And in that moment, he kind of gets paranoid and he looks out his door and Count Orlok is down the hall staring at him.
Yeah.
What I would have done personally is after reading a sentence stating that he has this like supernatural ability to like stalk you in your shadow, I'd make it to where like he kind of like pauses reading right then and there, and you're given a shot of him and a huge scene of his shadow.
Okay.
And he doesn't move or anything, but you can just see a very faint figure like living in his shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And Hutter is now aware at this point that he is being stalked and he's being watched 24/7. But he continues living on throughout the night, like as if he's not being watched.
Okay.
But he's like sweating, he's paranoid, and he can feel Count Orlok's eyes on him because he's literally right there.
Yeah.
That's how I personally would have done it. I think it just would have, especially going more towards like what Rob Edgars did and did more of like a horror movie and something like way more terrifying. That's what I would have done. But I understand that they were going for something very specific.
Right.
This one's not important, but I did count how many times she did it, and I thought it was hilarious. There was 2 times throughout the entire movie, and this like right after this scene being one of them, where it shows a scene of Ellen, like sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And she walks on her tippy toes, and it looks really goofy, and I just thought that was funny. She does that twice in the entire movie. And I know that it wasn't like a all women do this thing at this period of time, because the other chick, speaking of which, I forgot to bring her up. In this, I don't know if they stated it in the new movie and I missed it, is the wife of the rich guy, I forgot his name.
Friedrich Harding.
Is his wife Hutter's sister?
No.
She is in the original.
Yeah,
They mention Hutter's, like he left Ellen with a man, stated his name, the husband of his sister.
Okay.
Like they quite literally throw it in your face.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but that could definitely be true.
Well, right, but again, I just don't remember them ever mentioning it.
It's not in the new movie. In the new movie, that I do know that there's a big change to Friedrich, and there's like an emphasis on why they changed him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, so Tippy Toes, I just thought that was funny. Oh, there was a really cool shot when Hutter is kind of being tortured by Nosferatu in the original movie. Like when he's like curled up in a corner, and like it was right after Nosferatu's shadow comes off of Hutter.
His name's Count Orlok. He's not named in Nosferatu.
Sorry, I'm just referring to, I just keep
Right.
saying that, especially for people who aren't as educated.
Okay.
But Count Orlok, like when his shadow comes off of Hutter,
Yeah.
he stands up straight and he looks over to his left, which is the right of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene of Ellen waking up from her bed on the right side of the screen, looking towards the left.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of has this cool effect of like them looking at each other
Yeah.
across time and space kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of cool. And maybe, I don't know if that's what they were aiming for, but that's how I took it.
It could be because there's like a big thing about like their, boundless love and stuff like that.
Right. So I just thought that was really cool. Oh, yeah. So at first I thought it was random, but they brought in a scene of a professor, some random ass professor with his students, and he's showing them a fly trap, like the plant. I forgot the technical name, but like the
Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes, like a vampire, no? Question mark?
Mm-hmm.
And because it was so short, quick, and random, I was like, there was literally no reason for that scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that the only reason why they brought up that scene is because that professor, aside from that one scene,
Yeah.
is brought up at the very end of the movie for like a minute.
Yeah. There's
Hutter-
not a huge emphasis on him.
Yeah, but he showed us up for those 2 minutes in the Venus flytrap scene,
Right.
and then he pops up at the end of the movie for no reason. Like Hutter asks him for help, but then he doesn't do anything. Like he just follows Hutter, and then like it's the end of the movie. Like it's literally pointless.
Yeah.
It makes more sense in the new movie, and I'm assuming they're the same character,
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe's character.
Yeah.
But it's just like
Albert von Franz.
it makes way more sense in the new movie, but in the original, he literally could have been taken out of the movie and it wouldn't have changed a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, there's one point of the entire movie. So like, for a lot of silent films, and a lot of people know this, and for some of the listeners, they might not know this, but for silent films, they would show a scene and then it would go black with a bunch of words showing what the person said.
Yeah. Reading cards.
Right. But every now and then it would show a narration of just like describing what's going on in between scenes.
Yeah.
Obviously this movie had that, and it was a lot of like third person stuff, but there was one narration in the entire movie where the narration was speaking from an I point of view, talking about Hutter and everyone.
Okay.
But the narration said, "I'm surprised on something about Hutter's journey," but it was a lot of I. And I was like, wait a minute, who's narrating this story?
Mm-hmm.
And then like looking at all the other narration squares, like even though it's still talking in the third person about other people, it sounds like it's being spoken to or spoken from by a person.
Yeah.
But it doesn't clarify on who. Like, is it the professor? Is it the Friedrich? I don't know. Like, it could be anyone.
It could be anyone.
Oh, and then I wrote that the professor had no purpose.
Gotcha. Is that your last note?
That was my last note. So should we circle back to the one that I brought up earlier? Or
So I do just want to say a few things about the original movie.
it's a little goofy.
It is I mean, in today's standards, it's a little goofy, but it's very interesting the story that's behind Nosferatu because, as you know, and as a lot of people know, it's a retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
But it's essentially just like the German version of Dracula,
Yeah.
and but there's a huge emphasis on the occult. And the reason why is because, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, but the like leading producer of the movie was, if not, factual, I mean, or if not so, it's heavily believed that he was part of the occult. And the letter that Knock receives in the beginning of the movie, that's got all the scribbling on it that he's reading, and he's just like so giddy about that Count Orlok sent him, is an actual language of the occult. So like there was a select few of people at that time that could watch that movie and read what that letter said, essentially. Wow. And and a lot of that bleeds into like the narrative itself.
Yeah.
Because Dracula, or Vlad Tepes, or whatever you want to call him, he became a vampire because his wife, who I'm blanking on her name, she fell off of a tower, and he wanted to find a means to bring her back to life. So he, learned the dark arts and turned himself into. He essentially wanted to become a sorcerer, but that ended up translating into the monster of the vampire that he became.
Right.
But it's also a very curated monster because it's obviously was based on, actual folk tale and like the Strieger and so on and so forth. And it was also heavily inspired off of the story Carmilla, which was another vampire story prior to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was about like this young girl who lived in a mansion, and she ended up getting a visit. Her family got a visit, and that there's like a young girl that's like a part of that family, or like a daughter by the name Carmilla.
Yeah.
And she's like infatuated with the main character, and it just turns out after like a lot of investigation and probing that they find out that Carmilla and her mom have been alive for hundreds of years, and she's like haunted by like this old lady that comes to her at night and like drinks from her breast and stuff.
Right.
And it turns out that old lady was that girl. It's very weird. But anyway, when it comes to Nosferatu, the biggest difference is that Count Orlok, in his time, was essentially a demon lover in layman's terms. And he was part of a cult. And he makes a deal with Balial. Balial? And he turns Count Orlok into like a vessel, essentially. And that's why he becomes grotesque and ugly.
Right.
And there's a big emphasis on like the plague that that he brings.
Right.
There is some undertones, and it's highly debated whether or not it's a reflection of like anti-Semitic undertones and stuff, because Count Orlok looks like a Jew. Big nose and fortune and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. That's just like the controversy behind the original movie
Oh yeah.
of its time, at least as it aged throughout, the 1900s. Um, but anyway, and so like instead of shape-shifting into like a bunch of different creatures and stuff, he's just very much a creature of darkness. So that's why there's a lot of like shadow play. There's a big emphasis of like him living in the dark, him being like pale white. He doesn't like become young and beautiful when he drinks from people's blood.
Right.
It's purely just to sustain himself. And he's constantly looking for like a better source and taking directly from Dracula when he sees the pendant and it's got a picture of Ellen in there. He's like, he's been alone for so long that he's like, oh my God, I must have her.
Right.
Whilst in Dracula, he sees a picture of Mina, and Mina just happens to look identical to his wife.
Yeah.
So he thinks that like all of this time that he's been alive has paid off, and he found the resurrected version of his wife. Which, I don't know. I personally, and I'll get into why even after we talk about Robert Eggers' movie.
Yeah.
I personally like Nosferatu more. I feel like, in general, I like the aesthetic of the story more.
Yeah.
I like the bigger romantic undertone, or not even undertone. I like the more romantic aspect that's played out between Thomas Hutter and his wife.
Yeah.
Compared to Harker, yeah. And because Harker just seemed like, I don't know. It just seems bland.
Yeah.
To me. Like almost just as if there was something that even the original Nosferatu movie figured out.
Yeah.
And they were able to do a lot more expressionistic narrative stuff, like doing more of a story about the plague.
Right.
Which is interesting, by the way, because that movie came out just a couple years after the Spanish plague or the Spanish flu.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie came out just a few years after the COVID.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are very reminiscent when you're watching that movie and like, there's like a virus spreading and everyone has to go into quarantine and you feel like you can't control it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But what I find interesting. Damn. I mean, there's just a lot of big thing. I mean, there's like obvious things like they changed the names to all the characters. Instead of Count Orlok, instead of Dracula, it's Orlok, and Harker, it's Hutter, Mina, Ellen. They changed Van Helsing to Albert von Franz.
Yeah.
Which definitely has more of like an impact in this new movie. The Demeter is the Mbessa.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and Max Schreck, because of his performance and because of how Delulu people were back in that time.
Max Schreck, by the way, is the guy who played Nosferatu.
Yeah. They thought he was a real vampire. That's why they made the movie. Oh my gosh, what's that movie called? What's in the Shadows?
With Willem Dafoe.
With Willem Dafoe, because he plays Max Schreck
playing a vampire.
Well, that's the thing. In the movie, he's quote unquote playing a vampire, but in that movie, for comedic purposes, he is an actual vampire.
Oh my god!
So like he's like having all these issues that like a vampire would have in like a fast-paced modern world.
Oh,
but people think he's pretending to be a vampire.
That's funny.
Which is funny because he's Willem Dafoe's in the new movie, but yeah.
That could also be said about the guy who plays Hutter. I brought this up when the trailer first came
Nicholas
out.
Hoult?
Yeah, because both of
Oh.
them were both in vampire movies prior to this.
He was in Renfield.
Yeah.
Oh my god, then. Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. I didn't watch it either. I watched Elvis the Alien do a recap of that movie. He's a big Nicolas Cage fan.
Oh, okay.
So he had some big thing, like good things to say about it, but it's a dorky movie.
Yeah.
It's something about like telling the Dracula story in modern day, like very normal suburban modern day is just odd. But anyways, let's get into the new movie.
Wait.
Oh,
So I want to contribute to what you were just saying.
okay.
Yeah. So, because we've kind of had this conversation to a degree, but I'm on the opposite side because despite how much I like Nosferatu and how I love the way Rob Eggers went about the new version of him, I like Dracula more
Okay.
for a couple different reasons. First off, and I know that some of it is definitely just the Hollywood version of Dracula, like things that came from like the Universal picture and moving forward.
Yeah.
But first off, a lot of the details that I'm stating could still be done in the right way as far as like horror and what have you. But one, I like the idea that one of like being a vampire could have like its benefits,
Okay.
making it to where people want to be a vampire, even though there's still like really traumatic drawbacks, like the whole beauty thing. You can stay as youthful, healthy, and gorgeous and like all this stuff for thousands of years. But what it costs is the life of others.
Yeah.
Like you don't have a choice but to consume blood from other people.
Right.
So it's like it's a traumatic drawback from this amazing gift. You can have like the strength of 1,000 men. You could be as fast as 100 cheetahs. And like you could fly and you can shapeshift and you can do all these cool things.
Yeah.
But again, the cost is what is like, is it worth it kind of thing.
Yeah.
You have to sacrifice daylight. Like you can't see the sun in person anymore. Like,
Well, see, but that's the thing. That's another thing that Nosferatu made. Is Bram Stoker's Dracula is... He's not like... He doesn't like burn in the sun or anything like that. And it's not necessarily implied that he's like weaker
yeah.
in the sun. But Nosferatu is what made the whole, like, when he's trapped in sunlight, he burns.
Right. I'm talking about everything that the Universal version of
Oh,
Dracula-
okay. Not just Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Not well, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I haven't read Bram Stoker's Dracula yet. I'm waiting for the opportunity to do so.
Okay.
But specifically from some of the things that not only were inspired off of his story, but things that the Universal version of Dracula brought upon.
Okay.
It's just like all those things that like people are aware of when it comes to vampires are things that I really like. And it could be as limited or limitless as the writer so chooses. Like they always make it to where like the normal day-to-day vampire can only do like X, Y, and Z while Dracula can do almost anything, which I think is sick. But but like when I was talking about how these things could still be told in a very horrific and terrifying way, similar to how Rob Eggers did it with Nosferatu.
Yeah.
The perfect example, and I've mentioned to you this before, but for people who are willing to explore as far as the realm of comic books, I forgot who published it, but
It's published. I know which ones you're talking about. They're published by Image Comics, but It's a collaboration between Skydance and Universal Pictures.
Well, right, but they did a line of Dracula, Frankenstein, and
The Creatures of Black Lagoon.
right. But like for example, like because we're talking about vampires, they did a short run of Dracula, which was like 3 or 4 issues, and it's technically a continuance of like the Universal Pictures Dracula, but it's told in a disturbing horror type fashion.
Yeah.
Like it's first off, the art itself is done by the same guy who did the assault, Batman Assault on Arkham, or sorry,
Arkham Asylum.
Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
So it's that same artist, and it's very stylized and it's gruesome, and there's just it's creepy, and like how they depict him stalking people as a wolf or bat is really terrifying, and he never says anything. The way I would have to rewatch the old Universal Picture Dracula, but in this issue they make it to where Dracula himself doesn't say a fucking word in the entire story. The only time he says, well, why I think that's terrifying is because every single time you see him, people are like like there's characters who like talk to him, and if he's in a public setting, there's no reason for him to respond. Like they might be gesturing like goodbye, or they're talking about him.
But a lot of the narrative is through Renfield.
Right.
And kind of like his expression and his, his like obsession of Dracula.
Right. But then there's times when Renfield is talking directly to Dracula, and Dracula is just like like he's just silent.
Yeah.
Or like he'll make a facial expression that indicates something. The only time he ever speaks is when he says Van Helsing. Because at the end of the story, Van Helsing sneaks up to his coffin, throws off the lid, and he has a stake, and Dracula yells Van Helsing, and then Van Helsing stabs him in the chest.
Mm.
But it's still a great story. It's terrifying, and it could be a sick vampire movie. The only reason why I would say no to it being a movie is because when it takes place is very similar to the same point in the story that Nosferatu takes place in.
Yeah, it would kind of be like the Dracula
version of the new Nosferatu movie.
Yeah.
The only difference is that this time you could really express things like a wolf stalking you in the shadow with like blood red eyes, or like this random bat or crow that's kind of just like stalking you off in the distance.
Yeah.
Like those kind of things would be kind of cool, but those are just things that I really like about Dracula. And you kind of brought this up in the last episode, but this is a perfect time for me to kind of like mention it. But I use a lot of inspiration from Dracula specifically for a story that I'm writing. And I'm not going to give too much away, but there's a creature in the story who's inspired by 7-ish different creatures throughout folklore.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I've taken a lot of inspiration that kind of overweighs a lot of those 7 creatures from Dracula specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just think he's cool. I hate the fact that he's been made fun of for so long, because then there's a lot of like Hollywood tropes that kind of ruin just vampires in general.
Right.
But alone as a story, even the original Universal picture, and I know the book is different, but I can still state it, like Dracula himself is a terrifying monster.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I appreciate that Nosferatu, or specifically why I appreciate why Rob Eggers did with Nosferatu. Like, he did the things that he did.
Have you seen Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Is that the one with
Gary Oldman?
I think I watched it. No, I have not.
It's the closest not 100%, but it's the closest rendition
That's what I've heard.
and adaptation to Dracula so far. It's not historically accurate. Like, that's kind of another note we'll get into with Eggers' version of Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And he's pointed that out too. But, like, it doesn't. A lot of the movie has a lot of very just big creative liberties. It mainly has to do with costume design.
Right.
But so far, it's the closest to the book.
So I haven't seen it, but based on some of the research that I did, again, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how. Sorry. So there's a show, Dracula, that came out a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I can't. So I've watched the whole show,
Yeah.
and I know for a fact that the last like 2 episodes are just completely off the rails, have nothing to do with the original book. It's just stupid.
I'm going to answer really quick. No.
Well, hold on. Yeah, I don't even. No, hold on. The whole show, I hate it.
Yeah, I don't like
I just thought it was weird. I don't know how accurate some of the middle episodes are, but from, again, the research that I've done, the only thing that's like, if not 100% accurate to the book, but like damn near close, is the first episode. Because the first episode and maybe the half of the second one is from Renfield's point of view, and it's like
Well, yeah, a lot of it is how Renfield became involved.
Well, right, but like his
he-
encounterment with Dracula, how disturbing it was, how violating it was.
They definitely punch it up a lot.
Yeah.
There is something they did right in. I think they made a little bit more on the nose in the show, but in the book, one thing that they did right is they kind of implied, as a part of Dracula like luring in Renfield, they kind of implied that like Dracula wanted Renfield to also be a bride.
Yeah.
And that's right.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of the book where there's a lot of like hidden gestures of Dracula being like bisexual.
Yeah.
And there is some speculation, and a lot of people have like debated whether or not maybe it was a way of Bram Stoker saying that he was gay. But that they did do well.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like the exact story, it's a departure for sure.
Yeah.
They did get his powers well. They made him very scary in the sense that like he transformed into like a wolf, and he like
They made it really disturbing though. Like when he turned from a wolf into a man,
yeah.
it like the wolf's body like bursted open and he kind of like birthed himself from
They
wolf.
almost made it seem like he like
Grew inside of the wolf.
yeah.
And it was kind of just like a vessel.
Yeah.
But it was him who turned into the wolf.
Right.
So it was just another one of
It's
those.
kind of like an Attack on Titan situation.
Yeah, like you're turning into it, but then, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too technical with Attack on Titan, but overall, I just wanted to throw out my argument because like I think we both have an equal appreciation for both Nosferatu and Dracula,
Yeah.
but like you're more towards one side, I'm more towards the other. But
What I really meant by that though is like that very specific story of like the vampire. In Hutter's case, it's a realtor. In Harker's case, he's an attorney.
yeah,
But like the idea of like a vampire being infatuated with like this girl
yeah,
that he like flips the world over to get to. I like the Nosferatu version more.
yeah,
Especially Robert Eggers' version.
yeah.
Are you ready to get into that?
Yeah, so you're kind of like getting into what I was going to bring up earlier. So in the original movie, Nosferatu has no idea about.
So let's just say that when we talk about the movie, this will be like spoiler talk.
Yeah, so spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the new movie.
And if for whatever reason you want to skip ahead, but even though this is like the main part of today's episode,
you
even
might as
though
well just stop listening to us right now.
yeah, but just for whatever reason, you're like, all right, I've enjoyed it up until now. I'm gonna go watch it, come back, listen to what these guys have to say.
Yeah.
Do that. But this is definitely spoiler talk.
Right. So, anyways, in the original movie, Count Orlok has he doesn't know anything about Ellen until he sees the picture, and he's like, "Ooh, what lovely neck she has."
Yeah.
And then he gets obsessed. And then he like signs the papers immediately, like, "Oh, I'm gonna get into this abandoned house," which they were very specific when like with his lines. He was like, "I want this abandoned home across the way from yours." Mm-hmm. While in the new movie, he's been obsessed with her for years.
Yeah.
Like ever since she was a child. And he's been trying to get in her pants ever since. And life kind of just like fell into his path.
Sort of.
Well, sort of, but like it was orchestrated to where things would work in his favor.
Right.
Hutter would offer him a home in a very specific place, and it would be in the same town as, you know, where Ellen lives. And then instead of having a picture that he brought with him, it was a little necklace with her hair in it.
Yeah.
And because in the
that smelled of
lavender,
lilac.
I was close.
The flowers that he pulled.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, you killed these flowers."
Yeah. But in the original one, he like looks really close at the picture, while in the new one, he like sniffs it. So I think that was kind of like their play on like it being brought close to his face. But
let me kind of, because what you're getting at jumps ahead a little bit. So let me just pull back a second. Why he's infatuated with Ellen?
Because she's special.
Yeah. So when she was really young, kind of the intro of the movie, but in very detailed description, when she was young, she knew in her heart that she had like one foot in a darker place.
Right.
She prayed for an angel to come to her and free her. And that's why, like in the beginning of the movie, she says, "Come to me, my guardian angel." She's literally calling out for an angel.
Right.
But because of where, you know, her thinking that like her praying in one foot in like a different realm of sorts would help her, the only person to hear her call was Count Orlok.
Right.
So Count Orlok, kind of taking advantage of that moment, does seduce her. Mm-hmm. More in a metaphorical sense. Like they don't actually rump, but
he kind of violates her spiritually.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little bit more.
Well, yeah, but it was more aggressive, and it was more like as soon as like she was aware of who he was, it was like, I don't want this.
Right. But because of his hold on her, which is kind of like him choking her out in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a more on the nose expression of that. But he has a hold on her for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And she explains in the movie that when she met Thomas, it was like their love was so strong that like it pulled her away from Count Orlok.
Right.
But as they've become more comfortable and Thomas becomes more fixated on work and trying to provide for her, he's like slowly slipping away and Count Orlok slowly creeping back.
Right.
But within all of this time, Count Orlok has sent Nock, and it's implied later in the movie that Nock is like new in town, sort of, but he sends Nock to this, German.
That's what I missed.
What?
I missed another note of like something they did in the old movie that I would want to reshoot, but like do it in my own way.
What's that?
Should we get into that now or wait till later? Because you're kind of in the middle of something.
Yeah, let's get to it later.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's implied later on that Knock is new-ish in town, and that he like opened up his realting firm, and he, it's not like accidental or anything, but he goes and he searches for Thomas, hires him on, and his first job is to sell the abandoned house, like you said,
Right.
in town to Count Orlok, which spirals from there.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and you see a lot of it in that footage in the beginning of the movie, this lilac is like, it, while taken from the original movie, is turned into like the symbol of Ellen, especially for Orlok,
Right.
because he recognizes her scent
Yeah.
based on lilac, like you were talking about. But what's also interesting too, and again, even though it's from the original movie, it almost plays out in Robert Eggers' favor based on how he wrote it. But like when in this version, when Thomas gets the flowers for her, and she said, "Why would you kill these beautiful flowers?" And she like tosses them off to the side, and them being lilac, it's almost like foreshadowing later in the movie when Thomas unknowingly signs Ellen's life away to Count Orlok.
Yeah.
So it's like the killing of the lilac,
Right.
and him killing the bond between him and Ellen.
Yeah.
But what else? Was there a point you were going to make, or did you want to save that for like after we talk about Robert Eggers' movie?
Point I was gonna make.
Yeah, about the scene.
Oh.
Or are you going to like save that for later?
All right. I'll just get it out of the way now.
Okay.
So there's a scene in the original movie where Knock escapes from the asylum,
Right.
and he runs through town and he gets chased by everyone.
Yeah.
Like everyone's mad at him because he killed a couple people, and they're all chasing him. And there's like a couple scenes with this in this sequence that I thought would be interesting, because in the original one he climbs up on the roof of some random building, and they start throwing rocks at him, and he keeps getting hit in the head
Yeah.
by the rocks, but he just keeps laughing.
Right.
First off, just that scene alone in a new movie, especially done by like Rob Eggers or something, like it being nighttime and people are chucking like pebbles at him like really hard, and they're like scraping skin off of him, and you see like blood bursting off, but
Yeah.
he's just laughing and the camera kind of just zooming in on him, would be terrifying. But one that's a little bit more aggressive and would kind of take it would only mean taking Count Orlok out of the shadow a little more, so it might work better as a Dracula thing than a Count Orlok thing. But
Yeah, but the change that Robert Eggers made in the movie plays in favor of the plot.
right, I haven't even said the scene yet.
Oh, okay.
But so later on in the original movie, during that same chase sequence, Knock makes his way out into a field,
Yeah.
and the people, they chase after him as well. He gets away eventually. Or sorry, no, he gets caught or something, but it's like, it's very nonchalant, it's whatever. But I thought it'd be interesting if in like a new version where he runs out into the field and they all catch up to him because he's just a little man, and you know, some of these people are way more fit than he is.
Yeah.
But they all catch up to him and they start like jumping him and they start like beating the shit out of him. And then you just hear that low like, and everyone just turns and looks in a direction, and Count Orlok is just in the weeds just staring at all of them, and his eyes are like reflective. And then like from the city, like it jumps back to the city, and you just hear off into the distance just tons of people screaming.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that Count Orlok's not that kind of vampire.
Well, right, but which is why I was kind of saying it'd be a little bit more fitting for like a Dracula movie.
Yeah,
But
because he could, at the very least, transform into something and tear everyone apart.
even if he didn't transform, he could still like fuck shit up.
But it could be more implied or
Right.
whatever.
Like if he started strolling back into the city as a wolf covered in blood, that'd be sick. But anyways,
but to kind of go through the movie, so a lot of it is after the beginning sequence and like Thomas getting the job. It's very quick. It like jumps to the point, similar to the original movie. A lot of it plays the same in terms of like beats.
yeah,
The biggest thing in the beginning of the movie, aside from the intro itself and kind of like the introduction to Ellen and how she fits into it all, because this movie has a bigger emphasis on Ellen Hutter.
yeah, it mainly takes place from her point of view.
Like it's more about her,
Right.
if anything. But the biggest thing, like I said, aside from those things, is the change to Friedrich and Anna Harding. And so they're close friends to Thomas and Ellen Hutter, who've got like their own family. He's the port master, I think is what his title was. But he's like it's like an inherited from a long lineage, like a business of like previous port masters or whatever. He's who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I want to say her name's Emma Corrin, the girl who played in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh.
I can't think of that character's name either. But yeah, Emma Corrin plays Anna Harding. In this one, they have 2 kids, 2 girls. So that was like that was another big change because they kind of introduced those characters before, like, before having to include or introduce why they're important to the story. Like they just make them like relative to the nature of like the 2 main characters.
Right.
And we also get another early introduction to like the doctor of the town. But anyway, so when Thomas gets his order to go to Transylvania, the biggest difference, like you were saying, in the original movie, he's much more energetic, and it's more like he's going to go on an adventure. While this one, he does have optimism, but it's more so it's like, this is it. This is our big break. I can go do this. I can make money, and I can take care of you.
Right.
And we can be happy forever. And she's like, no, don't go, because she already knows.
Yeah.
Like, she knows what's waiting on the other end.
As soon as he leaves, shit's gonna get
like
real.
She knows where he's going, and she's like, this can't be good. But obviously, because she loves him so much and she loves like where they're at in life, she's like too afraid to tell him.
Yeah.
And she's tried to tell him, but it's just, what good would it do now? You know? And she does briefly try to stop him, but obviously he's too stubborn to listen to her. And so, and before I move on to the next part, Ellen, a big part of like her character, along with a lot of Robert Eggers, is huge into research.
Yeah.
When he's doing his movies and his screenplays and whatnot, he's a huge nerd for getting it doesn't matter how fictional the story is or how fantastical it can be. If there's anything that can be historically accurate, he'll do it.
Right.
And another big part of Ellen's character is that back in that day, when women were hysterical or when they were epileptic or they had spazzes and stuff like that,
Postpartum or anything.
people believed that they were in touch with like the afterlife, or that they, similar to like how it's told in the movie, like they had one foot in a different realm.
Yeah.
So and he did research and he looked at pictures of like doctors' depictions of like women spazzing out and stuff. And that's how he choreographed Lily Rose Depp to play Ellen. So when she would like spaz out or when she would like have seizures and stuff, that's like how they looked.
Yeah.
They just looked demonic. And it's all her. It's not like she doesn't have like cables on her or anything like that. Like when she like tweaks her body and shit like that, like that's all her.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And there's also some things like just costuming wise, like the corset that the doctor prescribes that is like tightened around her waist to like maintain her is like a real style corset that like tightens from the front.
Right.
That was like predominant in that like region of Germany. But and then going forward, back to Thomas. So he starts his journey, like you brought up before. He runs into the gypsies. Mm-hmm. And something that you notice in the original movie. So I'm blanking a little bit because I've seen the 70s version more recently than I've seen the original one. Mm-hmm. But in the original one, I'm trying to remember how he loses his horse.
Who?
Hutter.
On his way back.
Because he takes off on a horse. And when he doesn't
lose it.
Does he like he leaves it there and then he gets on a carriage?
Yeah, so he does like a majority of his trip on the horse.
Right. But when he stops at that cabin,
he gets to a certain point to where he encounters someone who has a carriage and then they take him back home.
Wait, no, I'm saying on his way to Transylvania.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because he leaves home on a horse.
He gets to the village on a horse. Mm-hmm. And then he just walks. From the
That's right. He just walks and
from the village, and then he gets picked up.
Yeah, and then there's like a little bridge he crosses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah. He gets taken, he walks a little bit to like this little horse thing, and then a carriage of normal people, they take him to the bridge. They said they don't want to go any further. And then he walks past the bridge, walks for a little bit, and then he gets picked up by.
So in the 70s movie, it's kind of just, I don't know if maybe the version I watched was cut wrong or something, but he gets there on a horse. And then he just leaves walking.
Like he just abandons the horse?
So I'm trying to remember if there was even a horse there when he walks away, but he just leaves on foot. And then he eventually gets picked up by the dark carriage. But see, but what's more important is that in the new movie, when he gets there, and this is when more of the research comes into play, because when he gets there, it's gypsies there, and they're immediately like bombarding him, and they're like asking for money, or they're trying to like play music for him, and they're trying to like entertain him, and essentially they're trying to get something out of him.
Yeah.
Right. And then after like a pretty long back and forth between him and like the group leader and so on and so forth, he asks for a place to stay. It's not the group themselves that tells him not to go forward. It's like a little old lady.
Yeah.
It's like
it's the same old lady from the original movie too. like there's like a bartender who tells him not to go, and then the little old lady in his room tells
Right,
him
but
not to
it's
go.
more so the little old lady.
Yeah.
That's just like, please don't go. Like,
Yeah.
it's just danger here forward. But instead of a book, oh, I'm sorry. I just want a quick little tangent. The word Nosferatu, by the way, because you brought it up earlier, like in the original movie, it's like a word in the book. That's the same thing in the 70s movie, but the word Nosferatu is just like a word from Dracula. In the Dracula book, it's like only used once, I believe, but somewhere in the scripture is like they describe the curse of the vampire as Nosferatu.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it comes from. But anyway, so in this movie, they don't give him a book. The little old lady puts like a crucifix, like a cross around his neck. And in the middle of the night, instead of like him reading the book or having like a weird dream or writing to Ellen, in the middle of the night, he notices that like there's a party of people, not like a party, but like a group of people heading into the woods with a nude lady on horseback.
Yeah.
So he's just like curious, and he goes and follows them, and they're going to kill a vampire.
Yeah.
So they like open up an old grave, and they stab a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's because like around this time, in a lot of different European regions, they thought vampires were real.
Right.
And in this movie, they are real.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so that's kind of like more of the spooking Hutter thing to begin with, and why he leaves so abruptly the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a quick little note. It's really hard to tell, but the vampire that they stab in that scene, he has a really red face. And it's because when they were making the prosthetics for like Count Orlok, and they were like trying to design the vampire and stuff, Robert Eggers had like a consultant of like Transylvanian folklore and stuff. And the consultant said, Strieger were described to have red faces. And Robert Eggers was like, shit. He's like, well, that doesn't work, So when he created this vampire, it's hard to tell, but it's just got like a very red face. Kind of implying that like it's been drinking a lot of blood or something.
Right.
And then also he translates that to Count Orlok himself by like in a later scene when he's drinking blood, he's got blood all over his face.
Right.
So that's kind of like his nod to that. But going forward, so it obviously cuts back to Ellen here and there, and like the Harding family like trying to take care of her, them witnessing her spazzes overnight. They're still waiting for Thomas, because unlike the original movie, Thomas hasn't written to her at all.
Yeah.
No one's heard from Thomas the whole time he's been gone. And there's a pretty long period of time that it's just like not Albert von Franz, Willem Dafoe's character, but there's like a town doctor who's the one kind of like handling the situation.
Yeah.
And he's the one who keeps saying like, just tighten the corset, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Because he's an idiot. But, so there's that issue going on. Just to kind of like bring the focus back to Ellen and showing like how difficult it is for the Harding family to like take care of their friend.
Right.
But with Thomas, back to Thomas again, when he finally arrives, in the original movie, he kind of like goes past, and he goes past the threshold into danger where they told him not to go. And he's very just, what's the word? Compliant. He just kind of like does what he's told and so on and so forth. Like he goes over the bridge, He gets into the carriage. He's, you know, goes into the hospitality of Orlok and so on and so forth. In this movie, he's like walking in these like empty woods. He's already into danger. He's already into darkness. And when the carriage arrives, no one's driving the carriage. It's just horses. These two gigantic black horses that are dragging this gothic, super eerie, highly decorated, but like ancient and classy looking carriage.
Yeah.
And Thomas, even though he's like worried and he's scared, from this point going forward, he's not compliant. He's actually being controlled. Because when he opens his eyes, the carriage is like oriented so that the little hatch door opens up, and he unwillingly starts to walk into the carriage. And he like looks down, you see his lap, he looks back up, and then he's like standing in front of the castle. And you can see like he's just got like this stunned face this whole time. Like he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
The doors open on their own. And then you see the silhouette of Orlok, and then it's just like down into the gates of hell from here.
Right.
Because he goes into this dark castle, and it's like only lit by candlelight, like actually only lit by candlelight.
Yeah.
And that's like he sees he can barely see Bill Skarsgård's Count Orlok at this point. But that's a huge distinguish. That's a huge difference from this movie compared to the original. Is that in the original he just kind of looks at Orlok and he's like, "Wow, look at this big dinner," and like, "Oh, here's the deal," and blah 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 blah. But in this movie, the only reason he's like doing any of it is because he's mind controlled into walking in. Maybe mind controlled is not the right word. It's more like compelled.
Yeah.
To like walk in. And that's why he's like sweating. And he's got this scared look on his face the whole time. And Count Orlok's just like, I can't do his voice, but he's just like got this new, deep, scary Transylvanian accent. And it's super eerie and weird. And every time Hutter's just like, let's just do this. Let's get this over with. Orlok's like, no, drink. And he like pours him a glass of wine. And he's like trying to feed him. And he like
stalls the whole like encounter.
Yeah. And then, like you said, the next day, Thomas like wakes up, but he's weak. Actually, it might even be the same night. Then the next scene that they show,
I think
when they do the paperwork.
I think it's the same night.
Because I think he's wearing the same clothes.
I think so.
But
I really don't know.
Regardless, in the next scene, Thomas Hutter at this point, like he's a little bit more compliant, but he's more scared.
Yeah.
Because at this point, he's looking at Orlok, and this is a big, tall, scary, dead person.
Yeah.
He's decaying. He's rotted away. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And looking at him, it's very apparent, because that's another research thing, is Robert Eggers wanted vampires, like a vampire that was not only scary again, but back going to folklore. You know, he based it off of like how they were described as like walking corpses.
Right.
And so that's why he's like got maggots crawling through him, and he's got like crevices in his skin, and his skin's like gray.
Yeah.
It's not even pale, it's just gray and dead. So like Brandon, what you were saying before is this is when it shows the scene of, instead of seeing a pendant with a picture. He sees the pendant. He immediately like reaches for it and takes it from Thomas, and he like kind of turns and he hides and he sniffs it and he says lilac, because he knows.
Yeah.
He's like, it's kind of like his confirmation and reassurance that his plan's working.
Mm.
And not giving Hutter the chance to do anything, he like passes Hutter this new contract that's in old, Transylvanian or whatever, and without a second thought, he puts gold in front of Hutter's face, and that just makes him sign the papers,
Right.
not knowing that this was a paper to sign Ellen away to Orlok.
Yeah.
And which it's clever because they are actually like doing something with the scene to make the rest of the movie make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess if we're talking about wieners, in the original movie, as you remember, one of the mornings that he wakes up, he's kind of like running through the castle, and he goes down into the barracks, and he sees a coffin. He opens it up, and Count Orlok's all shriveled up and, gangly looking in the coffin. But in the new movie, they kind of flipped that whole scene on its head. It's orchestrated the same way.
Yeah.
But instead of Hutter going down there out of curiosity, he's going down there to kill Orlok.
Yeah.
He like grabs a stake and, he opens the coffin and he like raises it up, and that's when Orlok like stops him, and he like stands up. He's butt naked, and he's got a big
wiener,
saggy vampire wiener.
Wiener.
Which, fun fact, Nicholas Hoult says that he kept the prosthetic, and he has it framed in his home.
Wiener.
Yeah, he has a vampire wiener framed in his house.
Gross.
Yeah, but that scene though was sick.
It was intense.
I loved the dogs, or like the wolves.
He's talking about actual dogs, not his toes.
Oh, yeah, but Count Orlok has like these two wolves. Maybe you could even say that's like a nod to Dracula almost, but he's got like these two wolves that end up chasing Hutter throughout the castle,
right?
Causing that's another big difference too, is because that's what leads Hutter to like stand out on a balcony, and he slips and he falls into like a running river.
Yeah.
But in the original movie, what makes Hutter leave on his own is when he wakes up one morning to a locked door, and he looks out the window, and Orlok is loading a carriage full of coffins, and then he loads himself into one of them, and the carriage rides off.
Yeah.
And then Hutter finally takes that as the chance to leave. I do like how they couldn't have redone that in the new movie. It would have been too goofy.
Yeah.
I like that in this one it was more of like an accident.
Yeah.
Because he ends up like getting washed up somewhere else and found by like a religious, like a church.
That's something else I was gonna bring up, is because in the original one, he like stumbles upon the doorstep of like a Christian hospital or something like that.
Yeah.
And he gets taken care of by a doctor and a nurse.
Yeah.
While in the new one, when he washes up on shore and gets found by like a nun, it's less of like a hospital scene and more ritualistic.
Well, yeah, because they put him on like a big pedestal and they pray for him.
Yeah.
Because they sense a darkness in him, because he's been, at this point, for like 2 nights in a row, he's been like siphoned of blood.
Yeah. By the mosquitoes.
by a very big mosquito.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're praying the darkness away.
Right.
And that's kind of what restores him. He's not back to full health, but that's what restores him.
Enough to travel back.
Yeah, for him to put his clothes on his back and start riding back home.
Yeah.
And then they do probably one of the fun changes they do to the movie is the telling of the Mbesa.
Yeah.
Because in the original movie, it's a lot of like, there's not a whole lot. There's a little bit of scenes of like the men getting sick, of like rats like moving across the boat, and then a lot of it is told through logs that the doctor finds when the boat docks later in the movie. But in this movie, they kind of show like in real time.
They skip to a specific scene from the original one.
Yeah, but it's to when like most of the men are dead.
All the men are dead.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
No, there was.
Sorry, in the original one, there was only 2 men left: the captain and then one of the salesmen. In the new one, there was like 3 or 4 guys left.
Well, yeah, and then there was like, yeah, because one of the guys goes down into the deck, and he's like, "I know there's something in that coffin," and he's like making his way to Orlok's coffin, just for Orlok to be like hiding in like behind a pillar.
Yeah.
And that freaked me out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even notice him, and then all of a sudden it was like the torch like moves past him, and like Orlok kind of like turns around.
His back like shifts.
Yeah, and I was just like, holy shit! I didn't realize, and he's huge too. So it's like it's you're kind of shocked when you realize you missed him.
Right.
And then he like snacks on the guy, but I thought that was a really fun change. Because then there's no one left.
Yeah.
Because after that scene, it's implied no one's left because the boat ends up not docking itself, but it crashes into the port.
Yeah.
Which is a great change. Because in the 70s version, there's one guy left, and he's kind of just sitting on the steering wheel, and he dies on the wheel, but the boat docks itself. It like travels into the middle of the town and it docks
So they
itself.
kind of do that in the original one, because after that guy, he pulls out the axe from his belt and he's like, "I'm going down there."
Yeah.
The captain ties a rope around his waist and he climbs up on, I forgot what that thing's called, but that pointy nose at the end of like ships back then. Yeah. He climbs up on that and he isolates himself on that for the entire trip.
Right.
Somehow miraculously still able to steer the boat back to shore.
Well, no, that's
right.
Orlok.
Right, because when they get back, he's no longer on that thing and he's resting next to the wheel, and there's a thing of blood behind his neck and he's dead.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like the original movie showed what the 70s one missed.
Yeah, a little bit. So during this time, while the Mbesa has been making its way to, I can't think of what this town's called in Germany, but let's just say back to town. And Hutter has already made his way back, and when he comes back, he's obviously not in full health, and both the town doctor and Friedrich Harding meet Professor Albert von Franz, who's Willem Dafoe's character,
right?
Who is a controversial but well-renowned professor because he believes in the occult and he believes in the supernatural and stuff. Because even when he sees Ellen Hutter's character all tied up, he's like, unbound her. Like,
Yeah.
unbound the poor girl. He's like, that's not gonna help. He's like, there's something big. Like, he tries to tell people, like, there's something bigger going on that you two people are like too stupid and closed-minded to realize.
Yeah.
And it takes a while, but he finally like starts to be. He puts the pieces together, and he's like, we're dealing with a vampire.
Yeah.
And that's when he says the line. He's like, NOSFERATU.
Yeah.
But and it's kind of too late by that point because the boat, the Embessa, has docked or crashed. The rats are plaguing the city. Fun fact: there was 5,000 rats, real rats, used in the production of the movie,
Jesus.
including the scenes where Bill Skarsgård was in the coffin in the beginning of the movie, and later in like the
Mbessa.
in like the tomb in the graveyard.
Oh.
But there was like 5,000 real live rats that the actors had to deal with.
Jesus.
Which is crazy. But and even in that coffin that Bill was laying in, not only did he have rats in there with him, but he had live maggots crawling all over him.
Ooh.
I know, it's gross.
Is it weird that I find the maggots more gross than the rats?
Well, especially, no, I agree. The maggots, that grosses me out.
Yeah.
I
Like the
can
rats, I'm like, oh no, I'd do that.
I mean, especially if they're trained rats.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, yeah, get in there. But
They're
like
just little homies.
you throw some maggots on me, I'd be like, this is
Vomit.
And they said they had to do like 5 takes of him just opening the coffin because he kept doing it wrong. So that's like 5 different times they had to like reset and
Put maggots on them.
yeah, that's gross. But anyways, so yeah, so by this time the boat has crashed. The city ends up going into a crazy pandemic. The rats have plagued everyone, and people are dying one after the other. And finally, both the Hutters are kicked out of the Harding home because, and it's rough. It's really rough.
Yeah.
But
This is heavy spoilers.
yeah, this is heavy spoilers. But at this point, Orlok has gone into his house, the abandoned house. Knock has not only gone mad, bitten like a chunk of a guy's face off. That was like one of the cell guards or whatever. And he's done rituals to communicate with Orlok, like butt naked. He bit the head off of a pigeon, all kinds of gross shit. But now he's reconvened with Orlok at this point. And Orlok tries to get to Ellen through the Hardings. So first he starts to torment Anna Harding. And she starts to see delusions and things, and it starts to make Friedrich like frustrated that like they've brought this on to their family and whatnot. But not only that, but she ends up getting infected with the plague.
Yeah.
Because, oh, dude, it's rough. But so the way it plays out,
Friedrich gets compelled to stay asleep.
yeah, he gets compelled to stay asleep, and then Anna wakes up to like commotion going on in
Screaming.
screaming by the 2 girls in their room. And when she wakes up and she goes to see what's going on, Orlok's done with them.
Yeah.
He's already like sucked them dry, and he's like holding one of them up.
Isn't one of them missing a head?
I think so, but he's like finishing off one of them, and he just like rips his face away from the body, and he like tosses her off to the side like a rag doll.
Yeah, I thought he just like dropped her in front of her.
Yeah, he kind of, but the body just like,
Yeah.
I'm not that I'm not saying that I like seeing kids die. That's not what I'm saying. But I like it when movies don't hold back.
Oh yeah.
Like they do the same thing with like the first It movie.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just like it makes the movie
That much more real.
and like scary
Yeah.
because like this mom's just seen her two little girls like their lives like literally.
And it's something that
Eaten away.
Rob Edgers hasn't hesitated with, because like even in the Witch movie, the baby going missing,
Yeah.
like it's not like you see that baby ever again.
No.
That baby dead. It gone.
Yeah, a little boy ends up getting like his own curse. The mom ends up going mad, and her one of her breasts is pecked away by a raven.
Yeah.
The two little twins end up getting killed by the goat.
And I was gonna bring up a different movie, but Rob Eggers didn't do that movie.
Which one?
Hereditary.
No, that's Ari Aster.
But the movies are so similar.
Yeah.
Their way of making movies are like,
Yeah. But yeah, so the two girls get killed. And it's just it's like nasty, but in like the best way.
yeah.
I don't know. It's something about that scene is just like very memorable. And so that's when it's not long after that Friedrich wakes up finally to his wife not only dead but from the plague. There's like rats around her body and whatnot. So there ends up being a huge funeral sequence later of all of them being put into like a big tomb. Which is it's rough. It's hard to watch. It's very heartfelt. It's very sad. And like I said, right before this, Ellen and Thomas are kicked out of their house. They're forced to go back home. That's kind of when Ellen opens up to Thomas and he to her about like what they both know and how they both know Orlok,
Yeah.
which leads to a very brief and kind of odd sex scene.
Yeah.
And
Being taunted into sex.
yeah, because, you know, she's like, oh, well, he told me that, like, you signed my life away to him. And Thomas is like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I know of the papers. I know of the deal you made. She's like, where's all of the money? Where's all of the gold? Where's the new house? Like everything you promised. And then she goes into a spaz and he stops her spaz by like saying like, oh, you're being ridiculous or something like that. She crawls to him and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like she's like, I'll be better. And then she like looks up at him and she's like, you could never please me as well as he does.
Yeah.
And he kind of takes that, like you said, it's like taunting him. They get into it.
Him, quite literally.
Yeah. It seemed like they were both enjoying it. But
Good for them, I guess.
yeah, like nice.
Nice.
And yeah, there's not much more to say about that. Anyways, getting past the awkward sex scene. So essentially, the movie, from this point on, there's a lot of the town has died at this point, and Albert von Franz kind of confronts Ellen, already knowing what's going to happen, but both of them kind of come to a conclusion that she needs to be the answer and she needs to be what ends this whole thing because she's kind of what started it.
Right.
And which is kind of implied in in different ways in the two older movies. But so while they kind of go on a goose chase and they go to find Orlok's coffin and, kill him while he's in his sleep, that leads to, it ends up just being like a whole, a ruse. And they go to Orlok's coffin in the abandoned house, and when they open it up and they stab him, it ends up just being Knock in there. Which is, like you were talking about earlier, a big difference from the original. So this is when it plays out just almost identical to the original movie, where Ellen lures Nosferatu into her room and she deliberately lets him, feast off of her. And even long enough till the daylight so that he can be caught in it and he'll die. It's like romantic and beautiful, but it's like heartbreaking at the same time because she has to sacrifice herself. But it's like it's because of her love for not only Thomas, but like for the safety of everyone else, that it's just, it costs her life. And also notably, he doesn't actually like evaporate or turn to ash like in the original or like a traditional vampire. He kind of just like, it's almost like the sun dries him out from the inside.
Yeah.
Because he kind of shrivels up.
Right.
And turns into like a long skeletal type corpse laying on her dead body.
Yeah.
Which sucks. And I mean, I think it's a beautiful scene. It's really well done. But it's just like it comes to a point where Hutter finds his wife dead on the bed with a giant corpse laying on top of her, and
both of them butt naked.
Yeah. And that's quite literally where the movie ends. But it's just this deeply dark but beautiful version of not only Nosferatu, but like the Dracula story.
Yeah.
I do agree with the way that both Robert Eggers and Lily Rose Depp describe it as like it's like a dark fairy tale.
Yeah.
Some notable things, I mean, I guess in that scene, and you see it earlier in the movie too. Count Orlok, when he's biting into people, and most notably Ellen, he bites into their breast near where their heart is. And that's also because, due to a lot of research, they found that Striegers siphoned blood from the heart directly.
Yeah.
Or like the valve, oh my god, I'm blanking on what they're called. The arteries near the heart.
Right.
And it's also just gross in the movie because the audio, like the sound designer and stuff, he made it to where like you could hear the swallowing.
Yeah.
And like the gulping. It was almost like he was like siphoning blood out
by the gallon.
Yeah. And even like when he like pulls his teeth out from Ellen for the brief moment to see the skylight, and she like brings his head back down so that he bites back into her, it almost sounds like an apple. Like you can hear his teeth like just driving through
it's like
the bone.
Yeah, it's very piercing and fleshy, and
it's gross, but it's awesome.
Like a slight hint of crunch.
Yeah, it's awesome though. I love it. Overall, I didn't mean to go super in depth into the movie. It's more so the reason why I kind of walked through it was like, for any who know about Nosferatu or the differences, I was trying to like go through a note of the major differences of the movie. Most notably, the biggest difference, like in layman's terms, I guess the best way I could have wrapped that up is The biggest differences to the movie are Count Orlok and Ellen. Ellen is like the main driving force of the movie this time around, and they give narrative more supernatural reason as to why she's involved and how she's like the whole reason why this movie goes the way that it does. And then the biggest difference with Orlok himself is that he's a more folklore vampire, which I think pays off greatly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was 2024's Nosferatu by Robert Eggers. Any thoughts?
Well, first off, I want to watch it again,
I do too.
just for the sake of watching
I'm
it.
definitely going to buy the physical version of it when it comes out.
But the more we talk about vampires, just reminds me on how much I want to read the Dracula book. And technically, there are times when I have the opportunity to do so, but sometimes it's like a patience thing. Like sometimes when I get home from work and I want to like decompress and like not do anything,
Yeah.
reading is effort for me.
Yeah.
Playing video games or watching TV isn't, which I know is kind of like, I guess what some people would say like the problem with modern age. But as much as I want to read it, my brain's like, oh, I don't have the time because I'm so exhausted.
You can always like take it to work with you and read it on your lunch break.
I thought about that, but like my lunch breaks aren't that long. They are on Fridays, but I already have a book there that I haven't read yet, and I'm going to start reading that one.
Oh.
I could switch them out, but
I mean, it could literally just be as simple as like on your calendar, you could just like block out an hour.
well, anyways, so yeah, it's just not really an option for work. But that's kind of a side tangent. But yeah, just like the more we talk about vampires, the more I want to read my Dracula book. It also makes me want to read the I Am Legend book.
Yeah.
Because vampires.
Vampires.
But yeah, how about you?
I mean, first off, Robert Eggers has like a lot of people, he has very quickly become one of like my favorites. He's only done 4 feature films, including Nosferatu,
Right.
and all of them are bangers. The Witch is great. The Lighthouse is great. The Northman was great. And Nosferatu is great. And I hope that this 5th movie that they just announced is just as good.
Yeah.
So today we are recording on the 23rd of January. Just this week, I want to say it was Tuesday, they announced that Robert Eggers' next screenplay called Werewolf. It's spelt a little differently. It's like WERWULF. Got greenlit. And it's going to be a 13th century werewolf horror movie. And everything about that just sounds awesome. Especially after the flop that was Wolfman. That movie did not do very well.
I called it. I fucking called it.
It's not for the reasons that you were upset with, though.
I so called it.
It was more, a lot of it was, strangely enough, a comparison to the original The Wolfman. It was a lot that had to do with like poor writing. Dialogue wasn't all that great. And they also tried to rush what's usually something that spanned out through like a week or so into the span of a night. Because typically a traditional werewolf movie happens throughout the course of like a few days.
Yeah.
And especially for like a first time werewolf, the transformation has more of a toll, especially when they're waiting on like the next full moon.
Right.
Whilst this guy, he like gets scratched or bitten or whatever, and then that same night becomes a werewolf. You know, so it's like, and one thing you did point out that a lot of people had complaints with is the way he looks, and it's mainly just because, unlike a traditional werewolf, he loses hair.
Huh.
Yeah, I know you called it, but I'm just saying like the more actual broadly known criticisms of people who've seen the movie. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I wasn't going to go see it anyway, but hopefully Robert Eggers does something. Hopefully, chances are he'll do something much better.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I am curious though, because based on just purely based on face value, like what is this movie? You know, because like The Witch is like an original story that he did. The Lighthouse is an original story, but it's got like, from what I remember him saying, like there's a lot of influences from, you know, another project that he did, and then it's also got like a small kind of undertone of like Prometheus and like Pandora's Box and stuff like that. And then the Northman is based on the old Viking tale that inspired Hamlet and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Nosferatu is a remake.
Yeah.
So it's like, is Werewolf going to be like a completely original story?
It could be based on the story of the father and his son tale.
I would be really excited and really mad, because you and I were just having a conversation not long ago, or we were talking about like different ideas.
Yeah.
And we were both saying like that's the story that should be tackled, but it's like, dang, could have gotten to that first.
Yeah.
But it does say 13th century, and that folklore is a lot older, unless he plans on retelling it in 13th century.
Maybe. But there again, the 1200s is fucking old.
I know, but this folklore that like you're referring to, the father and son, is like an old Norwegian folklore.
So it would be his second Norse-based movie.
Yeah. It's just the timelines are different. So I don't know. But it seems like an exciting project. I don't know what a werewolf from Robert Eggers would look like. I mean, we've seen him do major prosthetics before, but is he going to go like more Wolfman type prosthetics? Or is he going to go it's something closer to like a lichen from like Underworld ish? Like something that's more like a humanoid wolf?
Yeah.
Or is he going to go like an actual dog? You know?
I don't know.
Or I don't know. Be interesting. But final thoughts on Nosferatu? Maybe it's bias. I personally give it a 10 out of 10.
I want to say it's something that I mentioned when we first saw the movie, or maybe I'm thinking of a different one. But I want to say I give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Because it's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any complaints about it. But there's something missing.
Okay.
And I don't know what it is. So I want to give it like a really strong, like 9.5 out of 10.
Okay. I do have to say, I'm going to interject really quick. I was just like, I've been listening here and there to like other podcasts, other people's opinions. And I came across this other small podcast. They're obviously much bigger than our podcast, but they're a relatively small podcast. of the two hosts are two women. One of them, like they had both just seen the movie. One of them had done a bunch of research. One of them went in blind.
Yeah.
The one who went in blind gave it like a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
And she said it was because, one, she hated Ellen Hutter as a character.
That's okay.
She said that she pissed her off throughout the whole movie.
That's weird.
2, she didn't like Thomas Hutter because he was too much of a weenie. She wanted more of like a heroic stallion guy, but she understood the point of like Ellen being the lead of the movie.
Yeah, but that's also like not what he's supposed to be.
Yeah. And she brings that up. She's like, I understand like what they're going for. She's like, I just didn't like it. And then she said 3, that she didn't like that Orlok was ugly throughout the whole movie.
Well,
she thought it was going to be more like Dracula, where like he would feast on blood and he'd become like more attractive later.
Oh.
But she was like, no, he's just ugly the whole time. And then the other girl was kind of like, yeah, but he's not supposed to be pretty. And she's like, yeah, but I don't like that. She's like, I kind of wanted like a sexy vampire.
So watch Dracula.
She's like, I wanted like a dark, sexy vampire. And I was like thinking the whole time, like, you don't get it.
I would say though,
It would be interesting.
like Rob Eggers making like a styled vampire movie that kind of follows some of those tropes, like of like a vampire who gains their youth through like consuming blood.
Yeah.
I would be curious to see what that would look like through his eyes. But again, that's not the point of this movie.
And also, he also said when he was doing research, he had watched like a bunch of other vampire movies,
Yeah.
including like Bram Stoker's Dracula, and even oh fuck, I'm blanking on the movie. There's a comedic version of Dracula
Yeah.
made by the same people who made like Naked Gun and
Yeah.
even the same lead actor. But in that movie, like makes fun of all of the things that are ridiculous about Dracula.
Right.
And it's because of that, like he looked at like all of the good and all of the bad that comes from vampires, and like what doesn't make sense, what could make sense, what he could pull out and what he could get rid of, all in the means to make a vampire scary again.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like what you're saying of like what would it look like? What if he went there with like a vampire that like he followed that trope of like drinking blood, and like
I would say
if he was like beautiful looking when he came out the other end.
I would say the closest thing would be that comic book I was referring to.
Yeah.
Because like that shows a lot of the similar tropes of like the Universal picture Dracula, but they do it in a very creepy way.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's like the closest thing we would get to it, but just turn that into like a live action movie.
So sorry, I saw something just the other day and I had to bring it up. Christopher Lee, so the guy who played not Sauron, Saurion? Sorry, I'm not good with the names in Lord of the Rings. Not Gandalf, but you know the other wizard?
The White Wizard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was also like in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So that actor, he's played Dracula before
Right.
when he was really young. And just recently there was like this lady interviewing him, and she was like thanking him for everything he had done and so on and so forth. And when she turns around to the camera, she's kind of like doing the outro, and she said, and that was Christopher Lee, master of horror. And before she could like cut away, he's like, what did you call me? And she goes, the master of horror. And he's like, I played Dracula one time and I've made 30 movies since then.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it's a compliment. And she's like putting her arm on, or her hand on his arm and everything. And he's like, but that's just like, why would you call me that? He's like, I'm not known for horror by any means. He's like, I've been in one horror movie. and she's like trying to defend herself, and he's just like super insulted.
I want to watch this.
And I was just like cringing the whole time, but it was something about it was like so good. Like I couldn't look away.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sorry, I had to bring that up because it was like in reference to like the one time he played Dracula.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nosferatu, I personally give 10 out of 10. It's got like that. Oh, and the way that I described it when we left the theaters is that's like, I don't know. This is like the most, I don't know. This is not a great way for me to put it, but it was the only way I could describe it. It's like the most metal movie ever. Like when, it's like on top of like all of the gothic movies, that it definitely takes the cake for like a lot of people who are like the actual goth community who really like The Crow. I wonder if they like this movie at all because it's just got all of it.
Brandon Bruce Lee Crow, not Bill Skarsgård Crow.
Yeah, I feel like that was implied. But yeah, that was the only way I could describe it when we walked out of the theaters. I was like, that movie was just so fucking metal. It was like awesome. And I love that they didn't hold back. Dude, guess what the budget of this movie was?
I don't know.
$40 million.
That's not a lot.
I know.
Like compared to what they usually do, that's actually like way cheaper.
I know. And I think it's awesome. I think it's a fun fact that Chris Columbus, who's responsible for like writing the screenplay to the first Gremlins movie, and he directed Home Alone, was like one of the leading producers on this movie.
Right.
And even Robert said that like Chris Columbus was like a huge help in terms of like there were scenes where they would only do like a portion of something, but maybe only interpret it vaguely. And Chris Columbus would be like, no, it says that this is in the script. He's like, show it. And, he would push Eggers to like show things that like weren't being conveyed from the script.
Yeah.
And I think it made it all for the better.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, even for as intense as this movie is, it's somehow Robert Eggers' most digestible movie. Like, this is probably his most commercially susceptible movie.
Yeah.
Like, anyone could go watch this. Whilst, like, things like The Witch or The Lighthouse are more niche in terms of, like, aesthetics and storytelling. Because, like, both... What I mean is, like, both of them are more artistic in nature. And not only that, but because of how accurate in terms of their dialogue it is. Like, unless you're really paying attention, you can't understand what they're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in The Witch, they're speaking like how Puritans used to talk.
Right. And
same thing with The Lighthouse. It's Willem Dafoe with a really deep Scottish accent. And, it's just, this movie's like the most commercially digestible.
Yeah.
I'd say. But yeah, great movie. I'd like more scary vampires.
Yeah.
Not like edgy modern vampires. Like, I would just want actually scary vampires.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, I think there's a lot of things that even with traditional Hollywood tropes of vampires, I think it could still be done in a scary fashion. But yeah, I personally give the movie like a 9.5 out of 10. I say it's an amazing movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything bad to say about it. The only reason why I debunk half a point is only because I feel like there's something missing and I don't know what it is. But because I don't know what it is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's an amazing movie.
I would definitely recommend watching it.
Oh, hell yeah. Especially if you're someone who's not a wuss and like can actually like tolerate not only like gruesome stuff, but if you're open-minded to like creativity, because there are some things that like some people, because like when we watched it, there were some people giggling at certain things that happened throughout the movie. But it's just, I don't think they had necessarily like an open mind to accept how creative it was.
Not only that, but it's just like, yeah, it's like, it's, I think it could be said about a lot of modern movies, let alone horror movies. Like, we're getting into a realm where directors and writers are able to get away with more.
Yeah.
Like, we're finally not in this era where it has to be super Hollywood. Like, real artistic and creative stuff is being made. And you have to be able to go in, like what you said, like with more of an open mind and try to understand the vision
Yeah.
as best you can. Or else you're just going to be going in there being like, this is a weird movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Kind of like that girl you're talking about.
Yeah, like if you go in there with expectations that this is going to be another like Vampire Diaries, then yeah, you're going to be really disappointed.
Right.
But this is supposed to be a scary vampire, not a sexy vampire,
Yeah.
or a streaker, more specifically.
Right.
I don't know. I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about the movie.
Yeah. Most of what I had to say was towards the beginning about the original one, but
Yeah, because you just seen it for the first time.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
I think maybe we could have. You had a pretty busy week, but maybe if you didn't, or if maybe this episode was saved for a later date, I think the only thing we could have done different is we could have maybe watched Francis Ford Coppola's movie. And
What?
yeah,
You say names like I know
the
what you're
Brahms,
talking about.
the one with Gary Oldman,
Oh, okay.
and just maybe talked about how both the movies compare to like the book or
Yeah.
our idea of Dracula and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, the hell, a whole episode could even be dedicated on Dracula alone. Not saying that that's what we're going to do, but like after I read the book eventually, or watch more movies of Dracula that I haven't seen before, because the Dracula movie that I really like to watch is not related to the book at all. It's more of just inspired. That's what I wanted to bring up.
What?
Like way towards the beginning when we were talking about the differences of like Nosferatu and Dracula, you brought up how Harker's wife looks like his bride.
Right.
In the Dracula Untold movie, they kind of did something similar to where after his wife died and then it skips way into modern day, he encounters a woman who I think has the same name as Mina. And she said, like, hi, I'm Mina. And she looks exactly like his wife.
Okay, so first off, I knew about the whole duplicate thing.
Right.
I totally didn't even think about what her name was.
Right.
But
I could be wrong.
Something I was going to point out is that even though that movie does steer off from the book quite a bit,
Yeah.
you could easily point out some things in that movie and be like, oh, maybe this is like a retelling of, like, instead of this being told from the perspective of like Harker or Renfield, this is like the perspective of like Dracula and his people.
Yeah.
Almost. Because, you know, in the book they talk about like him becoming a dark sorcerer and
Falling, like his wife falling from the tower.
right. So that's what I was going to point out. So like in the book, like his wife like threw herself off of a tower or whatever, but in like
Untold,
Untold,
she fell.
yeah, and oh my
Well,
god,
pushed,
but right, and like there are those comparisons, and
it could be like in a certain era, like years after he's lost his humanity, people have a specific understanding of what happened to him.
yeah,
But Dracula Untold is what actually happened.
I guess why it's called Untold.
Right.
It's like his like kept in memory of how it actually happened.
Yeah, and
Not that that's accurate, but that would be an interesting way to look at it.
right, and like instead of like him going out of his way to become a sorcerer, he made a deal to save his people.
Even though it's very superhero-y, like to a degree, like that's
It's still badass.
But like what I'm saying is that I love a lot of concepts. Like I love the idea of like the demon vampire or like the old vampire who's like in a cave.
Kind of looks like Nosferatu. Just pointing that
There's
out.
definite inspiration there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because whatchamacallit? I'm blanking. Oh, but even like the drawings of like the vampire in the book that's
Yeah.
shown later on kind of look like Count Orlok,
Right.
or like that gangly,
Dead.
Strieger, you
Yeah.
know, folksy looking vampire. But and they also, I guess, similarly to Nosferatu, is there's the emphasis of like the vampire being a demon
Yeah.
instead of it being like a result of like the dark arts.
Yeah.
You know? Which I think maybe execution wise, I could see why some people would have a problem with the movie. But like we talked about last episode, I love that movie.
It's sick.
It is cool.
The whole sequence of him going up against the army.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Luke
god.
Evans is, I think, a very unappreciated or like
Very
he's like
overlooked.
he's like a slept on actor.
Yeah.
I think if there was a world where he could have continued being Dracula, that'd be really cool.
Like, could you imagine if like the whole dark universe thing happened, and he was in modern day, and he had certain features that kind of gave him more of like the Universal Pictures Dracula, like maybe like the slick haired look, but it was like shortened, like obviously not as long. Maybe he wore like an all black suit with a red tie.
But like even going back to like, there's interesting like creative liberties in terms of like tying Dracula to like his roots in that movie, because like there's a point, not only do they talk about it in the beginning of the movie, but there's a point at the end where he like impales someone on
Yeah.
like a stake, or like the whole point of the movie is that there's like a war going on.
Yeah.
A big part of like the real Vlad Tepes's like lifespan was a huge war that was happening between, you know, Transylvania and Wallachia and the Turks and so on and so forth. Like that was a big part of his life.
I almost said the Persians, but I was thinking of 300.
Yeah, no. Wrong region of the planet.
Yeah.
But so there, even though it's much more fantastical in the movie, there's still a huge kind of like historical tie into all of that.
Yeah.
Which I think is really fun. Which even the original book vaguely references, and the Francis Ford Coppola movie actually references too, but they make it more like fantasy in that movie, because that's where his red armor comes in. He's like in this really old medieval-esque castle, and it's hard to explain the scene, but like when he's wearing his armor and stuff, it's like that red wavy armor that he wears in that movie.
Very like Ripley.
But it's even got like that giant helmet that's got like the big wolf ears on it, and it's sick looking armor, but much more medieval fantasy looking.
Yeah.
Whilst this one whilst Dracula Untold had a more, I don't know how you
Dragon. Well, like it had a huge
Yeah.
dragon thing.
Well,
'Cause,
yeah.
like in the beginning of the movie, they called him like the son of the dragon, and then when he meets the demon vampire thing,
Well, yeah, because that's
He's-
what Dracula translates to.
well, right,
It translates to son of the dragon, but like because of the fear that Vlad Tepes instilled into people, it got reconstrued into son of the demon.
well, no,
Yeah,
no.
I'm not saying the movie. I'm saying in real life.
Oh, well, no, I was talking about the
No, I know, but I'm saying that's why it like translates into the movie.
right.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that movie's. I know we talked about it last episode. It's underrated.
Yeah,
Deserved more. Maybe.
well, 2 episodes ago.
Huh?
Yeah, we talked about it on our first episode.
No, you brought it up in the listing of movies.
Oh, I did.
I just edited that episode.
Oh, that's right.
This last episode.
Oh, whoops.
But anyway, could talk about vampires for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of a long time, we've been recording a long time.
Holy shit! Yeah, we have.
We're over 3 hours now. Damn.
Oh yeah.
See what this cuts down to.
Oh, hopefully not. Who knows?
Any ideas for next episode?
See, at this point, usually I would, or one of us would tell the other, your homework assignment is X, Y, and Z. And then the other person would be like, okay, I don't know what to talk about.
That's fine.
Shit, we're 3 episodes in and we're already losing topics for it.
It's fine. I'm sure there's something to talk about.
I think, yeah. I don't know.
I do think maybe next episode, I don't know what it would be. Maybe something not movie related.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about games or maybe even comic books. We'll figure that out.
Talk about anything. We could talk about folklore. We could talk about, who knows? We could dive into the depths of John Solo and who knows?
You really like John Solo.
I really do. Or, I mean, hell, we have people who listen to this. They could give suggestions.
Yeah, that's true too.
Do you guys have any like movies that you have specific opinions about? Do you have opinions about some of the things we talked about today, like vampires or werewolves?
Or just things that you want us to talk about?
Is there anything underrated that you guys think need to be shown into the spotlight?
Give more love.
Yee dog.
But that pretty much does it for this episode. Leaving a like, it would be great for the algorithm. Leaving a comment and then letting us hear your thoughts helps, or a review if you're on Spotify. Word of mouth is the best way for, podcasts to grow. And so, like I've said before, if you know anyone who just needs something to listen to and they happen to be interested or can tolerate two brothers bitching about some nerdy stuff, point them our direction.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to have them. And, and there's that subscribe button. It's just like a little button. It's got a couple letters on it. But
And if you're on Spotify, it's a follow button.
Yeah, same thing. It's like same shape. It's like an oval.
Yeah.
With a word in it.
Very bubbly words.
All you have to do is click it.
Just different colors.
It's free.
Yeah.
It's
literally the freest thing you could do. I mean, unless you're paying for YouTube or paying for Spotify, that's your fault. But
I pay for YouTube and Spotify.
Well, I pay for Spotify too, but it's still free.
Yeah, it's literally, and it's the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do is click a button, and then the next time we post something, you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll be the first to know.
Yeah. And if for anyone who watches my channel, me as in Brandon, you could always do what I always say, find 3 people that you think would like this channel, have them subscribe and all that good stuff, and then have them find 3 more people and so on and so forth. We'll grow this happy podcast family. Yeah.
Family, huh?
Family.
Wow.
Vin Diesel style.
Beautiful.
Family.
I can't do his voice.
Family.
Real family.
That was more Sylvester Stallone.
Family.
Real family. That sounds fucked up. Anyways, I think we should just cut it now.
Yeah, probably.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. See ya.
See ya.
Peace.